ways to communicate with us up front, and then we'll do it throughout the show too. Of course, we have the 710 KNUS app, the 710KNUS.com website. You can text us from there. Those texts are constantly going. I got to log in here to the YouTube, which gets us hooked up. You can see me on there. Subscribers get to interact with each other and me on the text. We'll continue to push that. If you haven't subscribed yet, what the hell, man? Why haven't you done it yet? Get on there and subscribe. Get one or two other people to do it. And let's just keep this thing growing. Now, the video portion of this, I will admit, we've got to have more, more kinetic type stuff on here. I don't know if it means I wrestle with guests. We get more guests in studio. The in-studio thing, by the way, is also really super cool when people can do it. But if we could figure out a way to do the split screen with the video on the, someone else's WhatsApp or Zoom, or I don't know how the hell else to do it. We ought to do it. Now, if you're on YouTube, what you can see right now is I got this schwanky new sweatshirt I am a fan of, and they are not an advertiser yet, but and by yet, I mean ever, fanatics.com. And from time to time, they just have stuff on sale, and some of it's good, some of it's not. So, I grabbed the kids this or that Stanley Cup Championship t-shirt or something. And then I saw this wicked awesome U.S. Army Nike sweatshirt, and I had to get it. In fact, on one of the sleeves here, you can see it's got the sweet flag. And by the way, folks ask all the time when you're in uniform, is the flag on the wrong way when the stars are always going forward on each side? That's actually how you have to wear the flag. If you wear the flag on your right shoulder that you do when you're in uniform, the stars are also facing that way. It looks like the flag is backwards. It's not. The stars are always moving forward. And so whatever shoulder it's on, the stars will always be the closest to the front of your chest. I'm just throwing that out. And then, of course, there's old Ironsides from the Armored Division. And then, of course, the little West Point thing. That really is just a reminder of how not awesome I am, because I may have mentioned this before. I was nominated 2 consecutive years to West Point and could not figure out a way to break myself in there.
Wait. Backwards flag? Backwards flag?
Yeah, so like if you
How's
look
it
right here,
backwards?
Billy. Well, so if you look at it, this looks, you normally picture the flag with the stars on the left, right? Like that's how you picture a flag.
Maybe. Depends on like the guess. If it's one dimensional, yeah, but it's a 3-dimensional object. So it can always flip around and be the other side. There are 2 sides of the flag. So if I had the flag and the stars are there and the stars are there on the left, you can flip the flag over because there's another side of the flag.
There is another side of the flag.
And sometimes when the flag's flying and you're approaching it, sometimes the stars are on the
sometimes
right.
That's true, but if you look at almost any flag icon or flag picture,
it's on the left.
The stars are always on the left. And so when it shows up on your shoulder, on the right shoulder, and the stars are on the right, people ask, why is that backwards?
Oh, I get. Okay, I just I guess I never. I just, for me, it's a picture, and you can always just turn it around. And I guess true. I never looked at it as a forward or backwards thing. That's just I never actually considered it that way.
The stars are always moving forwards.
That's okay. That's weird.
That's just how it's done, man.
I was this old today when I learned this. A little embarrassed. Okay, thank you. I'm going to go back to my cave and sit down.
The sweatshirt
I'm
thing.
very confused.
Listen, yesterday I did not get everything done I wanted to get done for really 2 important reasons. The latter one was there was an unexpected scout event. There's something called a crossover ceremony where the kids from 696, which is a Cub Scout troop that all my kids have been through, ended up crossing over to whatever Boy Scout troop they're going to go to. And so there's a special event and you get the neckerchief thing. And so Graham ended up helping out with that. And of course, because Graham's 13 and can't legally operate a motor vehicle, although I'm sure he'd be a wonderful driver, Dad went out there too and helped with that. By help, I mean, I sat there and worked on my laptop while he was there. So we had a lot of that, but the biggest expenditure of my time, and folks, I have asked you to do certain things sometimes as a way of advocacy, and I'll do it again every day this week. Like when I talk to you about going to the website, 710knus.com, clicking on the Colorado Undivided banner and signing the petition, that is a form of advocacy. There are some of you out there in the 710 world who have gone to our state capitol right there in Denver, and have gone to give testimony for or against certain bills. It is, for a lot of reasons, a very unsatisfying effort. Unsatisfying right now because nothing you say as a Republican matters. There's a supermajority in the House, a near supermajority in the Senate. The Democrats control every lever of government. At the state level, nothing you say is going to change anything. And I know that if you talk to legislators, they would continue to tell you, no, we definitely listen. And I try to keep an open mind. And that's all a bunch of garbage. The votes are counted before they get up there on the dais. And when you come to sit down to give your 3 minutes, and there's a light scheme in front of you, a green, yellow, red, and you get 3 minutes and the little timer goes off and you can see it. Your 3 minutes, I'm just telling you, they don't matter. Now, it doesn't mean you don't do it. It doesn't mean you don't go there and make your piece and you say your words and they show up in the record forever and ever and ever. And you can go find the audio of all of these things on the legislative website. And it gives you some sense of where people are because there just isn't enough media to cover the Capitol the way it should be covered. But honest to goodness, it's just a giant waste of time. But you make the record. So yesterday, I was asked to go out and provide testimony on a bill that would elevate all car thefts to felonies. And it kind of redoes the felony structure. And as you know, because I've been harping on this now for a year or so, we're number one in the country for motor vehicle theft. And some time ago, the wicked smart people under the Gold Dome made one of these thefts, that's the theft of a vehicle under $2,000, a misdemeanor. And so they had tied the classification of charge to a value. And that might make sense for some things, like regular theft. We do that, right? Like regular property crimes, you go in and you shoplift a Snickers bar. That is a much lower penalty than if you go in and you steal a giant screen TV or a diamond ring or something like that. We do that. But it became pretty clear that doing that for motor vehicles was a way to really, I don't know, literally discount the impact of a stolen vehicle on another person. So who's most likely to own a vehicle under $2,000? Some 16-year-old kids, but some families. Like, that's it, man. That's how they get from point A to point B, and they probably don't own a bunch of them. They may own one. And so the legislature had made the decision to say, not that big a deal. If you steal Peyton Manning's car, it's a big-time felony, probably a third-class felony. But if you steal Billy's car, no, I'm kidding. Billy has that sweet Mercedes. I should use Billy as the example of the Peyton Manning car.
That's interesting that they do about the car, and I like your example talking about that, the car, because we see the advertisements for things like Arapahoe Kia and Mike Naughton Ford, things like that. But there is a second tier of car sellers out there, and they specifically occupy that market for those lower end models that normally have plus 100,000 miles. That these people only have X amount of dollars.
That's right.
And this is a tool. It's getting them from point A to point B, and it's how they stay employed. And it is vitally important to them. And I follow a couple of YouTubers, and one of which, that's his business. That's what he does. Is he buys cars for that specific market, and he talks about a lot of what he's doing. But you're absolutely right that is, in many ways, that car is more important to that low income family than that car is to Peyton Manning's family in many, many ways.
I also think too that we've gotten to a place, and I think it's taken us a while, and it's smart because it's always been value based as long as I was a prosecutor, is to recognize that there are two ways we can look at certain non-person's crimes. And one is the crime spends the same regardless of the value. And one is value-based. And so if you look at burglary is a third-class felony. And in the state of Colorado, that means it's a probation-eligible 4 to 12-year sentence. And even if you got 4 years, if you got 4 years prison, you would likely be turned around from prison into ComCore almost immediately, because 18 months before your parole date, you can start to transition into community corrections. So you're doing 1/3 of a 4-year sentence. You can do the math on that. You're almost going right into a ComCore. We just don't care about property crimes in the state of Colorado. More about that in a moment. But we don't say, hey, how much is Billy's house worth? And if Billy's house is only worth $800,000 or $500,000 or $300,000, it's worth less than breaking into Peyton Manning's house because Peyton Manning owns a $14 million home. We don't do that. We say your home is your home. And whether you're breaking into a shanty or a mansion, it's a third-class felony. That's the right thing to do. That's where this law is taking us with motor vehicle theft. It's the right thing to do. In fact, the reason yesterday became frustrating is I was there to testify in favor of this bill, along with a ton of sheriffs and chiefs of police and state patrol. And even this was really shocking. Even the AG sent in at the last minute someone to run in and quickly jump on a panel and say, and Phil likes it too, which is amazing because he doesn't normally see any laws that aren't against the cops that he's in favor of. So that was helpful. And I sat there and waited, and I get it. I'm not an elected official anymore. I'm not a sheriff or a chief of police. Got to see our good friend chief out of Arvada, Ed Brady, out there. But I was there with Mitch Morrissey, former DA out of Denver. I'm the former DA out of the place to the south of that. We went 2.5 hours. 2.5 hours. And it was immediately, I look up and I see they have these two 80 billion inch TVs on either side of the old Supreme Court chambers, which is where this hearing was being held. And I'm like, I could have done this remotely. I mean, are you kidding me? And they're taking the people, yes, chiefs and mayors like Mayor Hancock, they're taking them remotely before the people inside the room. That frustrated me. I understand there's a certain protocol that they adhere to that has nothing to do with common sense and everything to do with deference to elected officials. I get it. But I thought, man, I could have phoned this in. I could have done 8 million different things while I'm pissing away 2.5 hours. But I sat there 2.5 hours. I had told everybody, got to go by 3:50 because I got to pick up the little feller from basketball, take him to piano, and then we head to scouts. And they're like, oh, yeah, no problem. Well, it turns out it's a problem. So by 3:50, I'm out of the building. 3:53, I get a text. They just called you up. It's just typical. So listen, if you ever go to the legislature to testify, and I think the stories can be compelling, I think what the best part about going to testify is if this is a media interest bill, you can get some earned media from it, and that can help drive people to support it as well. But if you think you're going to go there and talk a legislator into a different position than they have before they sit in those seats, the chances of that are 1 in 100. That's my sense of it. 1 in 100. And so you go up there, it's almost performance art to some extent. But so it's frustrating. You can imagine waiting for 2.5 hours. It's like waiting for 2.5 hours in line for a ride at the amusement park. And you get up there and they're like, I'm sorry, we had to close the ride for wind. Or there's a mechanical and you're like, are you fucking?
The number of times it's happened to me at the Twister.
Come on.
All the time at Elitch's. Get in front of the line, and yes, we have some sort of mechanical difficulty.
Right there at the end. Or
all the time.
Or you're at a restaurant or some fast food place and you get up there and they just sold the last Chick-fil-A sandwich or something. If they could do that, I don't think they could ever run out, but you'd be like, come on, man. I want the last 2.5 hours of my life back. Didn't get it back. Extremely frustrating. But the bill, and you may appreciate this, passed out of committee 5-0. Now, there was one voice of opposition. One person showed up to represent a group of people to oppose this equitable, I can't believe I'm using that word, equitable change in the law.
Who was advocating for the criminals? I'm just curious. What was the
criminal defense bar?
There we go.
It was the criminal defense lawyers and their lobbyists. The lobbyists showed up to say, this is a horrible idea. This is a bad idea. It won't decrease at all. Yeah, it's predictable. It won't decrease at all car thefts. It's not fair. It's going to cause more people to be locked up. It won't change anything. All this other stuff. And then, the chair of the judiciary is Senator, she goes by Senadora Julie Gonzalez. And she voted for it, all right, to get it out of committee. I think they want it to die after appropriations, which will be the fiscal note that gets attached to it, because there is going to be one. We're talking about the potential for increased incarceration. I can't imagine it's much because nobody goes to prison in Colorado for property crime. And so, the questions that she asked were, what's the clearance rate? What's the clearance rate for these? And folks, the clearance rate for motor vehicle theft in the state of Colorado is at like 9%. 9%. That's sobering when you think about the fact that we were north of 41,000 stolen vehicles last year. That means about 36,000, 37,000 of them have, no one has ever been held accountable for them. The recovery rate is a little bit better. I think the recovery rate is higher than that. It's not even 100%, but the hold accountable rate, very, very low. And so that was a question like, how can this make a difference then?
That is the question I've got is, not necessarily how it makes a difference is, why would we, if that's the clearance rate, if that's the rate at which we are holding these people responsible, why are we surprised that the crime is rising?
Isn't that the obvious question?
Yeah, that's the part. I mean, this is just dumbass me coming at it from a parenting perspective, that it would seem that if we're not going to hold the individuals responsible for their choices, those individuals will probably make similar choices and continue to.
And keep in mind, those caught and prosecuted. First off, if they're caught in Denver, they don't go to jail. Nobody's held in jail on bond for stealing cars. And if they ultimately get to court enough times to be convicted, they're not going to prison. In fact, this law goes out of its way to say,
Waterworld?
if you have stolen a car 2 prior times, you've been convicted. And mercifully, it includes municipal convictions too, like Aurora's. It includes those convictions. If you get convicted 2 times before, then the classification charge is that third-class felony, like a burglary. But guess what? Still probation eligible. In fact, you could steal under this law that the criminal defense bar thinks is too harsh and ineffective. You could steal 100 cars, and under this law, never face the promise of any incarceration. And so they say, oh, well, this thing isn't going to be a deterrent. It's not going to be effective. And I agree. It's not going to be a deterrent. But that's not the purpose of the law. The purpose of the law is to bring some sense of justice to a system that has up to this point said, if you're poor enough that you own a crappy car, we care less about its theft. We care more about your theft if you're a rich person with a rich car. Well, that's bunk, man. That's garbage. That should never be in the law. But that's where we're at. So we're fixing that. The next step is, and we had Representative Matt Soper on from the Western Slope, you remember a few weeks ago, to say he's looking at doing this too. This will not pass out of committee, is to create some sort of a higher bail or mandatory prison or something. None of that's ever come out of this legislature. But the fact that this bill cleared the judiciary 5-0, and I'm not sure that means it's going to survive, is amazing. The fact that it happened without my words of wisdom, less amazing. That's probably, I probably could have sunk this thing. I'd have made it a 3-2 vote if I'd have kept talking. In fact, Representative Rachel Zenzinger, is it Senator Rachel Zenzinger? I think it's Senator. She was there, and as you can imagine, we're not on the same side of a lot of issues, but she was a co-prime sponsor of this bill with Bob Gardner from down in El Paso. And she leans over and giving me some advice on things to say up there. And she's like, maybe with finesse and in a way to not anger them, tell them that this is not a bill about deterrence. And I sat and I nodded and I looked at her for a minute and I go, I'm not good at that.
That's not my thing.
She laughed. I'm like, that's not my strong suit. Try not
That's
to
fantastic.
make them mad. I mean, but I think maybe to everyone's joy, the clock ran out on my ability to give that testimony. But that bill is going to now go to appropriations, where they're going to attach a fiscal note to it. And I should tell you, whatever fiscal note they come up with, in my opinion, will be fake, because nobody goes to prison for stolen cars. And this bill doesn't make that any more likely. Nobody goes to prison for stolen cars. So when you hear a clearance rate of 9%, and by the way, Senadora Gonzalez is asking the different law enforcement agencies and the DAs. There was Brian Mason from the 17th. There was Alexis King from the 1st. I mean, this was a kumbaya moment across woke spectrums of the DA world. And they were being asked questions like, well, what's this rate? And what's that rate? And what about that? And if it's only 9%, and I thought, you're missing the point. If we want to talk about how to close more cases, maybe what we could do is invest more in law enforcement.
Yeah.
If you look at, and I was going to say this if I'd have been given the chance to testify, I was going to tell these great senators up there, 5 of them up at the dais there, listen, over the last 10 years, you folks have figured out a way to grow the Colorado State Patrol's FTEs, full-time employees, by a mere 9% over 10 years, despite the surging population, the surging crime. However, the Public Defender's Office, which you also fund, has surged 67% over the same period of time. That's a growth rate of 750% compared to State Patrol. It also brings them within about 100-ish employees of being at near parity with State Patrol, a public defender employee for every member of the State Patrol. And people wonder why we don't clear more stolen cars. Maybe that's it. Why people don't go to prison or get help. Maybe that's it. We're invested so much in the criminal element and not so much in the stop the criminal element people. But I didn't get a chance to say that. That would have probably cost us the 5-0 vote, but whatever. I don't know. It was an experience. I hadn't done it since I was the DA. I kind of forgot when you're the DA, they try to scoot you into the front because they're like, oh, elected person, you must have things to do. So it was always nice. Now, as I'm just a member of the regular old public like y'all, if you go there, folks, sign up early. And if you're going to go there, frankly, do it online. I don't know. In person, I always think is better. I always say that to victims when we come into court. You could write something, but coming in person matters. That really does.
Yeah, in court, absolutely.
It does. And I feel the same way here, but matters a little bit more. I mean, you're really looking for the earned media there because honest to God, I think that was going to be a 5-0 vote if nobody testified on it. It's just the way it is. So, Billy, have you ever testified up at the legislature?
No. Why would they ever ask me?
No, they don't ask you. That's just it. They don't ask you. You just go and do it because you're passionate about something.
No. Unless they're doing some snake stuff. That's about no.
If they were going to outlaw snakes, like they pit bulled them or something like that,
maybe. I just like you talked about the idea that I'm not necessarily certain that me standing there and testifying is going to move the needle in any way, shape, or form. And the other part that I have an issue with is it is vastly inefficient. And I have something inside of me that wants to have efficiency in time. And I get very, very crossways with one of my children who we've talked about it before off the air, George. This individual, I think, is genetically part sloth and is vastly inefficient in the use of their time. And it drives me nuts. But that's part of the problem that I have is it is, to me, an inefficient use of my time because it is such a small window in which someone that is verbose as myself gets to spew things out of my pie hole. I'm not going to be able to, in my mind, use the time efficiently. To sit there for hours and hours and hours to vomit 3 minutes. To me, that's like being back in high school and college. I'm in a speech tournament, and I don't want to do that anymore. I'm not into that. So that's the part that I have. If it was more efficient, if they had a more efficient way to get me through there, then yeah, I probably would go down and do it. But for me, it is a giant waste of time. And the other part is I don't have the ability to many times carve out half a day or 3/4 of a day.
What normal human being does.
Yeah, that's the part that I have is to do that is it's going to lessen the amount of money that comes into the Thorpe family business. And we got four mouths at home that are very hungry.
Those drugs won't sell themselves.
Exactly. And I don't have kids. I have a plague of locusts at home and things disappear. It is, it's depressing sometimes. But again, that's the thing is I've never been motivated to go down there. And in part, it's because of that. It's because it would have to, the bar would have to be so high. It would have to be something I'd have to be so involved with in order to give up that amount of time to be that inefficient at what I'm doing.
And I get it. I think you're probably right.
I think it's also, I think it's set up that way in part to prevent people like me from coming in there and running our mouths because they don't want to hear from me. They don't give a
I don't know. I mean, I can't imagine what it was like in the old days, but maybe it mattered then. I mean, first off, the parking sucks.
Everybody
was
better
expensive,
dressed.
and you get the 2-hour meter and you blow past it and you just cross your fingers and hope that the meter maids haven't figured out that you've done that. I did that yesterday. Text in here from our friend Corey asking the question. Of course, Denver's DA Beth McCann was there, right? In fact, that's a great question. No, she wasn't. The entire metro area was there, including John Kellner.
Hunting arsonists. I think that's what it was.
Don't need to leave the house for that.
Yeah, exactly.
But the entire metro area was there, sans Denver. The Denver's mayor was there. Denver's mayor was there, at least remotely, to say he was in favor of the bill as well. Mike Kaufman was there. I think Southers couldn't be there, but sent a message saying, hey, I'm on board too. There were mayors from other parts of the state there. I mean, just no Beth, I guess. And then Joan, our friend Joan, texts in, hey, thanks for testimony. Of course, I didn't get there. And with your 3 minutes, you can slow them down. Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I feel like it's fodder in that way. It's not going to change anything. It'll be interesting to see if this passes. The other bill we should talk about later in the show, of course, is House Bill 23-1100, which is that bill that is going to scuttle Jason Meixels. That's the sheriff of Teller County, his current operations down there, because as it turns out, we love illegal immigrants more than we love law and order and public safety. We just do. That's what this law is saying. We don't care about public safety. We don't believe it makes a difference. And we can talk about that as well. I heard a little bit of an interview with Stefan last night with John the Builder, John Fabricatori. That was also good, but you could tell John was pretty emotional about the thing. It was the House, though, John. If it's cleared the Senate, we're in trouble. The House is the crazy people's thing. I mean, that's true in Congress as well, but here in the legislature, it's where crazy people go to scream and holler and light themselves on fire. It was always going to get out of the House. The Senate, that may be the place where you can upend this thing. And if the governor doesn't want to end up signing this, because he will be, I mean, if he's not already, and I think the argument's out there, an official sanctuary state governor, this would do it. This would do it right here. And I don't know that he wants to sign that into law. That is not going to make him more popular with the parts of the country he's going to need if he's going to end up running for governor. But what do I know? Hey, listen, let's stick around for the best part of the show coming up, the most produced part of the show. We get smarter on real news with the Thorpe Report, and then you choose the news. I can't cut away, though, till I update you on the weather. Here's what you know. Today, 47 degrees, not bad windy. Tomorrow, unchanged from the predictions from the weather prognosticators yesterday, 42 degrees, light rain and snow. But Thursday, this is weird. Thursday, they've changed their mind since yesterday and said, wait, we think Thursday is going to be 4 degrees warmer. That's over 10% correction, 38 degrees. On Friday, they said, wait, we changed our mind there. We're going to go back down another 2 degrees. We think that it's going to end up being 43 degrees. And then Saturday and Sunday, 45, 55. Monday, at least that's what they say now, 57. So you can count on it being a snowstorm on Monday since they think it's going to be 57 degrees. We'll keep updating you as they change their minds. Stick around for the Thorpe Report and you choose the news. It's George Brockler, 710 KNUS. George Brockler back with you here at 710 KNUS. Someone corrected me on my pronunciation. Even Sheriff Mickey Sell? Someone has texted, and thank you for helping me. Sheriff of Teller County is Mick E. Sell. Man, that I'm telling you, not even Jason corrected me. I wish he had. I'd have gotten that right. That's how we ended up with Steven for weeks here on the radio, is because nobody would correct the CEO when he started calling Stefan Steven. And then after about the third or fourth time, you can't do it anymore.
It's awkward at that point.
You can't tell him. Someone texted in, the car theft bill is, and I think they mean kabuki, but I think they've spelled it Kukabi Theater.
Oh, that's that tea that you drink.
Kukabi?
No, sorry, that's kombucha. Sorry.
No, it's one of those.
Apologize.
I've never believed it will pass or punish criminals. The importance of cars to working people is why horse thieves were hung in the past. Also, the time issue is why the caucuses are relics and they give the crazies a voice. Well, there's another segue into something that we've been talking about off air and we could talk about on air as well. In fact, you should know I've reached out to Aaron Wood by email this morning. Reached out to Tina Peters. Both of them want to be chair of the GOP. Tina and I have gone back and forth on a text or so. And we're going to have Dave Williams on tomorrow at 8 o'clock. And I think maybe today we might have Casper on.
Yeah, we're trying.
We're going to try to see if we can get Casper on to have the conversation. I just want to get everybody on to have a conversation about the future of the GOP because, man, it seems bleak at the moment. I want someone who's got optimism, but optimism grounded in reality. And some of these are the issues that people are going to be talking about right there. And by the way, I don't think that the bill is designed to punish. I agree with you, Texter. I think the bill is to try to find some way to at least put in the law some sense of justice, which I appreciate. If we're going to really have to turn, that's the other thing that the criminal bar guy said was, he said, studies show that what really decreases, the occurrence of crime is the certainty at which someone will be caught and held accountable. I'm like, well, those are two different things. One, the caught part, I get it. And with 9% close rate on these cases, I think what you're saying is invest more in police. Happy to do it. Happy to see us send more sheriff's deputies and police officers out there to go chase down these thugs. Oh, that's the other fallacy. Criminal defense bar guys just said, we know that most cars are stolen as an act of desperation. And that people are using...
they desperately want your car.
That's right.
Yes,
and people use them to stay warm and to do drugs off the streets. And I'm like, no.
Still not okay. Still not okay for you to come and take my car, regardless of the reason. And again, they are staying warm. They're staying warm while they're going and do the other crimey stuff.
I have not. That's very the other crime stuff. I have not seen... And it's not to say they aren't out there. Haven't seen a single case where we busted someone for car theft who's like, I'm just staying warm. Never. They use them to commit other crimes. In fact, the numbers show that the follow-on crime for motor vehicle theft is crazy. 1,100% increase in motor vehicle theft that's attached to drug crimes, including distribution and all that, but also a 500+% increase in the follow-on crime being like homicides and other violent crimes. So please stop pushing the fallacy that it's just poor people looking for like a tent on wheels. That's not what's happening.
Yeah, not at all.
If they're doing drugs in there, that's not the prime reason for stealing the car. It's to go commit other crimes and then do drugs in the car. Nonetheless, I'm going to get worked up over this. And we're going to end up talking about at some point today, probably the joyride provision of this, which still makes it virtually not a crime to borrow/steal a car for under 24 hours. We can talk about that later. Here's you would be shocked to see how many good cases are simply dropped by Beth's office. We see so many where we are throwing up our hands. We have a couple of attorneys in our office who left Beth due to frustration, and they just agreed that's crazy. I had a vehicle case from a solid discharge of a firearm observed by a DPD officer from a vehicle by an intoxicated driver with a stolen firearm in a vehicle. Criminal charges dropped with no reason. That doesn't shock me at all. I don't know that their conviction rate is better than anyone else's, but in terms of the cases that they're choosing to prosecute, I really don't have any doubt in my mind they won't stretch on the hard ones, and that race factors into many of the charging decisions that they make. I believe that, but just based on some things with some friends of mine who are defense attorneys, things that I've seen where I'm like, that wouldn't happen if the victim was white or that wouldn't happen if the defendant was this. You see that. That's just the sense I get. I don't have statistics for it, but I appreciate the input there. Now, listen, I've eaten into some of Billy's time here, but Billy, let's do it, my friend. Let's make people smarter with the Thorpe Report, shall we?
All right. Good morning, sir. We got winds that are going to be gusty throughout the day today. We've got a winter weather advisory in effect Tuesday evening, so last night, or this evening, through the Park and Elkhead Mountains. Flat Top, Rabbit Ears Pass, West Elk, places like that. Gusts could get up to 60 miles per hour. Why is that important to us? Well, it's because it's the best chance for the STO system to move into our area by Wednesday. It could bring light to moderate snow across Colorado. The best chance for us to see any snowfall will be late Wednesday afternoon and early Thursday morning. The system's not bringing the Arctic air, so don't expect the below zero temps like we had last week. Landlords have got a lot of power to choose whether or not they're going to evict someone or renew their lease, and some tenants are afraid to complain about the poor conditions because they're afraid they could just be evicted for complaining. There's a new bill under consideration in Colorado called the Just Cause Eviction Bill, because all the bills have to have a cute little name. According to the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, 5 states, 7 localities have enacted similar legislation, and it lays out specific requirements for someone to be evicted or to lose out on a lease renewal. Things like not paying rent, committing a substantial violation, which is odd, that things like endangers those living there, violent or drug-related felony, stuff like that, refusing to sign a rental agreement similar to the one they have signed previously, things like that. In 2022, there were 45,000 eviction filings in Colorado, according to analysis of court data. Statewide eviction filings are back to levels similar to what they were in 2019 before the pandemic.
No, nobody should be evicted just because they're not paying anymore or they're violating the rules. Yes. Once someone rents to you, that is your home, independent of whether you pay for it or treat it well.
Yes, it's now yours. Yes, I look at the idea that, I think that there are some provisions there that sometimes I've known some people that have been evicted for silly reasons. And so I do think there needs to be some protections. But this one, I'm not certain achieves what they think it's going to.
Legislature hates real property owners, Billy.
Yeah, they do. They do. And then I think that this is something that's just going to be more window dressing. But then we also talked about Senate Bill 23997 that you talked about earlier. Also, elsewhere, there's a pedestrian that was taken to the hospital with an unknown extent of injuries after they were hit in Denver's Marley neighborhood last evening. And they were hit by a driver who oddly didn't stop. Crash happened at Federal Boulevard and West Florida Avenue, Denver Police Department said. Elsewhere, lawyers for a man charged with killing 10 people at a Colorado supermarket in 2021 confirmed that he has schizophrenia. One expert found that he was approaching catatonia before moving to the state's mental hospital for treatment. Oddly, so he was approaching catatonic state, but still managed to
acquire a couple guns.
Yeah, and then get in his car and drive like 20 minutes to a specific location, all in his cat. Oh, it's interesting.
It's interesting, too, because the non-forensically licensed or certified psychiatrist that testified in the Aurora Theater case also said
non-licensed. That's important.
Non-forensically certified.
Okay, good.
Yeah, he's licensed, but non-forensically certified. And he testified that he also thought that the Aurora Theater shooter was possibly dealing with catatonia. I'm like, really? That actually got a chuckle from the jury when we went through the list of things this guy was doing to make it through every day. But I don't know, man. And the schizophrenia thing, irrelevant.
Yeah.
The only thing that matters, does he know right from wrong?
Exactly.
And can he form the intent to murder? Peace out.
Yep, that's
you go.
And finally, the Commerce City and Brighton Police and Sexual Assault Task Force is asking for your help. 47-year-old Jason McKell Brigham did not appear in court to face 13 counts of sexual assault on a child. He now has a nationwide extradition warrant for him, and he has a $1 million cash bond on his head. The Brighton Police Department is saying, hey, look out for this dude. He's 6 feet tall, 280, blue eyes, brown hair. That's... I'm not that tall, but the police believe he may be driving a blue Chevy truck, Colorado license plate 558 SFP. So take a look for him. Yeah, I don't drive a Chevy truck. Yeah, blue Chevy truck. So
is that Mark's car?
I think so. Yes. So that's it. That's all I've got right now. Why don't we step aside and then maybe we have
time to do some one other thing, a texter texted in and to also hit on some of the legislation passing out of the House, including the rent control piece of legislation, which magical. It just. This legislature is going to try to appease those folks who are more takers than producers. I mean, that's what it sounds like.
I don't understand the rent control idea. That seems what?
Well, I just want someone to point to somewhere on the planet Earth that has worked.
Yeah. Well, this is the problem is it depends on how, we got to step aside though. Depends on what your definition of worked is, because I think that you and I will have the same definition of how the market forces should work. And unfortunately, I think the people that are advocating for the rental control, they think that works in their twisted mind. Does that make any sense? Sure, but they're looking for a different outcome than what you and I are looking for.
Why would you ever want to maintain and upgrade your building? If you're like, well, I'm capped at the amount I can recover for those investments in that thing, I'll just let it run at the minimum possible.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Welcome to a dump. Anyway, sorry, we got to cut away for a break. We're going to come back for I imagine, the ray of sunshine in your morning. It's called You Choose the News. When we return, it's George Brockler on The George Show, 710 KNUS. You've waited. It's time. You choose the news on The George Show. William.
Good morning, sir. Yes, it is time for everybody's favorite radio news game show. You choose the news, where we have scoured the interwebs, to find ridiculous stories, giving them really stupid headlines to play this fake radio news game. Yes, we're going to give you a chance to get a first edition of a very special biography in just a few minutes, but first, we must play the game. Alrighty, sir. Here are your headline choices this morning. Headline number 1, sounds like an advertising campaign. Headline number 2, found is not equal to free. Headline number 3, what if they just hurt his feelings? And headline number 4, could they be an accessory? Alrighty, sir, your choices again this morning are sounds like an advertising campaign, found is not equal to free, what if they just hurt his feelings, and could they be an accessory?
Anytime you go with a criminal term, I'm going to go with it. Let's go with accessory.
Accessory. Could they be an accessory? We are traveling to the sunshine state of Florida right now, and we're basically going to meet a young woman who has been in jail since July. Now, this lady has been in jail for allegedly shooting and killing another passenger in the back seat of an Uber, but she is petitioning for her release because she says, you, Florida, are jailing an innocent person.
Well, that happens all the time.
Now, she was arrested on July 26th, charged with second-degree murder and a first-degree felony punishable by up to life in prison and a $10,000 fine. The Uber vehicle was allegedly outfitted with a camera, which did show her get into an argument that turned physical, and she is on camera reaching into the bag, pulling out a gun, and firing a single shot at the other passenger, killing them. But yet, she's still petitioning, saying Florida is jailing an innocent person. She's not saying she's innocent. She's saying her unborn baby is. And because she is pregnant, now Florida has jailed an innocent person, so she's saying you must let her go because you can't jail the fetus.
You can, but is the fetus a person under Florida law? Is the fetus a person?
I think it is an interesting esoteric argument, but that is hers.
I'd love to have that conversation.
I know. Isn't that fun? Yeah. All righty. What do you want to say? What next? Sounds like an advertising campaign. Found is not equal to free, or what if they just hurt his feelings?
Well, we were just at free. Let's go. Found is not equal to free.
Found is not equal to free in Memphis, Tennessee. That's what a man found after he was taken into custody over 2 bags of chips that he found. Yes, Joseph Braswell saw a man drive away in a car, and there on the sidewalk were 2 bags of chips. The value was about $4.98. When police officers showed up, they arrested him for stealing the chips. He said, "No, I didn't steal the chips. I just found them here on the ground." Now, there might be some issue there because after reviewing video footage, they didn't conclude that Mr. Braswell did see that the guy stole some stuff out of the store, ran into his car, and then drove away so he could safely assume the chips were stolen. So they're saying that he is now charged with theft of merchandise less than $1,000. So that whole, I just found it on the street or it fell off a truck doesn't necessarily work.
That's not it? I thought possession was 9/10 of the law.
No,
I think I learned that in law school.
No, that is finders, keepers versus losers and weepers.
That actually is a defense.
Yeah. All right, your final choice. Sounds like an advertising campaign, or what if they just hurt his feelings?
What if they just hurt his feelings?
Yeah, what if they just hurt his feelings? A man who accidentally in Canada shot himself in the leg during an alleged armed puppy robbery. He was trying to steal a dog, has actually had the charges against him suspended because a judge has found that a local police officer held him down while he was in the hospital and slapped him repeatedly across the face.
So
I know, but they're going to suspend the charges. They're not going to charge him with the puppy theft.
Because he got slapped?
Yes. An Ontario Superior Court justice wrote that at the time of the assault, the man was lying in a hospital bed and handcuffed by one wrist and suffering from the gunshot wound and a broken leg, which again was of his own doing. He was on medication awaiting surgery, and the applicant was vulnerable and not physically able to defend himself. And the officer took advantage of his situation by beating him. Then it comes to say that actually the gentleman who was the criminal actually was taunting the officer, and they got into a war of words, and some things were said, and so the officer came in and gave him what for. But
I don't know what kind of system says if the cops mistreat you, you're not actually guilty of the crimes you've committed. I think there's other recourse. Yes. Can't they sue them or something like that? All.
Well, that is it. We're almost out of time. That's the end of You Choose the News, and today we are proudly sponsored by Barnes & Noble. Yes, you can get a first edition copy of the brand new Harvey Weinstein biography. Yes, you can. It's a story of a plucky Hollywood producer with an eye for talent. He helps dreams come true just as long as you answer yes, you can to every single one of Harvey's requests. God. Yes, you can on better newsstands and poorer bookstores today. Back to you, sir.
Oh, buddy. The timing is impeccable because, as you know, bam, here comes the music right now. Listen, that wraps it up for the first of our 4 hours together. When we come back, we're going to be joined by a friend of the show. She's a regular force. This person has her finger on the pulse of just about everything. Her name is Sherrie Peifer. Complete Colorado, page 2, when we come back. It's George Brockler on The George Show. You're listening to the mighty 710 KNUS. George Brockler back with you here. Hour 2 of 4. Charlie Kirk at 10, Prager at 11, Gorka at 1. But then we go live and local again with Deb Floor at 3 o'clock. And then Stephen Tubbs 4 to 7. We are all back in the saddle. I think we were Friday too, but last week at this time in El Paso, Texas, doing that show from the border down there. Lots of stuff still happening, even at the local level here, that impacts some of that. Of course, that that House Bill 23-1100 was a big part of that as well. We'll continue to talk about that. Let's bring up our VIP guest. She's a regular on the show and someone that knows a little bit about everything and a lot of bit about a little thing. No, I'm kidding. I made all that up. Sherrie Peifer from Complete Colorado, page 2. How are you?
Morning. I'm good. How are you, George?
I'm living the dream. When you look at Denver out there, and I know you and I don't live in Denver, but we are impacted by Denver. Have you been paying attention to this Denver mayoral race?
As little bit as I can. That's a little bit that I know. No, I've paid a little. Yeah, I've paid a little bit.
Do you have any sense of where Denver's going? There's like 17 people running. That's no joke. And nobody is polling above like 8% to the extent that polls matter. I mean, do you have any sense of where this race is going to go in terms of the big names, or maybe there'll be a sleeper? But more than that, does it matter? Like, does it matter to the rest of Colorado who out of this group of 17 gets elected to be the chief executive for that city?
I think that's the key point right there. I don't think it matters. It's not much is going to change in Denver. Denver is it's not going to matter who gets at the helm there. Denver is going to remain the little socialist community that it is. I mean, I don't know that any one person can make that big of a dramatic difference. You know, but I don't know that it matters. And I think that's why everybody, even if you live in Denver, I don't know how many people who actually live in Denver even have a temperature on what's going to happen and who the front runners are. Because if you're outside of Denver, I think that's why everybody is checked out. It's because it's not going to matter. Denver's not going to change.
I worry about that because it's like the whole, when America sneezes, the rest of the world catches a cold economically. I feel that way about Denver, that when Denver sneezes or they make mistakes with policy, and my God, they can't stop making mistakes with policy, none of those ills stay within the borders of Denver. They all trickle out north, south, east, and west.
You're absolutely right. And all one has to look at to see that is all the gun legislation. I mean, because Denver, it was written into the state constitution, for heaven's sakes, the bans that they wanted on guns. And that's where we're headed now with the rest of the state of Colorado. You're absolutely right. And that is the scary part. And it's unfortunate that as Coloradans, we don't have any, there's nothing we can do about it. But everybody is so fed up right now, and everybody is so done with everything that I think a lot of people have checked out more than we probably should.
There's a couple things you've been writing on here that I wanted to ask you about. There's one that you wrote back just a few weeks ago, teen driver's license bill to cost taxpayers millions. What the hell is that about?
Well, that's about AAA getting a nice big raise at the hands of Faith Winter. So right now, there's a set of laws that you have to go through in order to get a driver's license. You have to go through a certain amount of training. You have to have a certain number of hours behind the wheel, blah, 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 blah. Well, this would make it so that anybody under the age of 18, everything you already have to do, you now have to add to that a 30-hour course on driving. And it has to be an approved course it has to be a course by a company in which their program has been approved by the state of Colorado. And it's going to cost you, you're going to have to pay for that because you're going to have to take it through some company. Well, right now there is one company that has that approved course already. And ironically, the bill is written so that it looks exactly like the course that this company has already written.
Oh my God. What's that company? Is it AAA?
AAA Colorado.
No.
It is the only company that will be able to hit the ground running the minute this bill passes and immediately offer this course. They currently offer this course. It's $99 for non-AAA members and $89 for AAA members. And they're going to be able to meet it. I mean, nobody else in the state offers this.
Sherrie, how did you discover this? This is incredible. I've heard this nowhere. Not shocking at all, but the mainstream media has not covered this. How did you discover that?
Well, I've been following all the bills, right? And I'll be honest, I've been following all the bills. I look at everything. I decide what looks ridiculous. Now, when I saw this bill, the AAA part of it was not the main focus of the bill. The main focus of the bill was just one more tax credit, because that's the other half of this bill. Is included in this bill is if you pay for driver's education, you are going to be able to get a refundable tax credit back from the state of Colorado for up to $500. I think it's up to $500, up to $400, something like that. That was the main jux to this bill. Yeah. But what you just said, no other media has covered this. I started Googling Faith Winter driver's license bill just to see it, because before I write anything, I see if anybody else has written on it. And if anybody else has written on it, I generally stay away from it, because that's not what we do at Complete Colorado. We tend to take looks at things that other people don't. So I'm Googling, this bill, and I can't find it in the mainstream media, but all of a sudden it pops up that with Dave Williams' name attached to it.
What?
And I'm like, that's odd. Why would, Dave Williams, former state legislator. And I'm like, okay, that's odd. So I go to look to see what it's about. And Dave Williams is doing this interview with this other media outlet, Brandon York, and he's talking about all kinds of things. Well, in this interview with Brandon York, Dave starts talking about this bill. And he's explaining to Brandon how it's a you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back kind of thing at the state legislature. And
they're saying this out loud?
They're saying this out loud, yes. Huh. And they are using this, he's using this bill as an example. And the you scratch my back, I scratch your back example is AAA is going to benefit from this bill. So you can guarantee that when Faith Winter runs for, and these are Dave Williams' words, not mine, but you can guarantee that when Faith Winter runs for re-election, AAA will be on her tracer report, because she'll be the first one to go to AAA and go, hey, do you remember that bill that I ran for you?
Oh, if not AAA, it'll be the employees and the spouses of the people at AAA. Much harder to trace. This is craziness. I haven't heard this anywhere, Sherrie. This sounds like bad government. Like this is exactly why people hate the legislature.
Well, it's horrible government. It is. I looked at the state of Colorado statistics for teen driver's license. And last year, this is how bad it is. Last year, the state of Colorado put out, I think it was something like 86,000 driver's licenses to people under 18. So you take 86,000 and you times that by
about $100.
$9. Yeah. AAA stands to make in the first year over $8 million in extra income off of this bill.
Close to $9 million. That is cray. Who's the agency that oversees whether or not your program meets the definition? I've got texters that have texted in here and have said, listen, all my children attended the Drive Safe driver training. I got to believe their training would also meet the qualifications. That's not true?
Nope, it's not. Because this is a whole new program.
You have to have AAA in your name to be qualified? Is that part of
No. No, and that program may very well be able to get qualified. But this is a completely different component to the driver's license test that does not already exist.
Wow.
And the other part of that is, like with my son, I was a single mom when my kid hit 16.
Yeah.
I couldn't afford $400 to send him out and get driver's training, so I did it myself. So I was able to give him the 50 hours of behind-the-wheel training that these driver's programs give without paying for it. This bill takes away that. You will no longer be able to do that unless you live in such a far-out, remote, rural part of Colorado that you cannot get to one within 30 miles.
This is nuts.
Yeah.
And nobody, this is crazy. Sherrie, once again, a testament to your reporting skills and investigative stuff, but that's craziness. I have not heard that at all. And it sounds, have you tried to interview Senator Faith Winter about this?
Oh, I sent an interview request, but I didn't get anything back.
I can't believe she wouldn't want to dispel this, because this is, listen, I'm not a conspiracy theory guy, but this feels pretty good. I mean, this feels like there's something else going on.
And that's just it. I mean, it's just, I don't know. Well, like I said, when you go to Tracer and you look to see who's supporting the bill and who's not, AAA is the main support behind it. And then when you want to know, and at first you think it's like all cozy, and you think, well, okay, AAA is supporting this. Of course, AAA is supporting this. If you get more education behind a driver's license, then there's going to be fewer accidents at a younger age, and it's just going to save everybody money in the long run.
Sure. There's already a 50-hour driving requirement. I'm going through it with my 15-year-old right now with Jeff. Someone else texted in, our friend Alexis says, by the way, when the driver's license test was allowed to be outsourced, remember, we had to take the driving test at the driver's license office. I remember that. So many companies were being bribed for a passing result. Surprise, a lot of the people who paid off someone were not legally here. I think that's real too. There's been a real lack of quality control here. Is there an agency that oversees this, that declares it, or is this just Faith Winter declares it, or who checks to see?
It says in the bill that it has to be approved, and I think it's through the Department of Revenue or the Department of Local Affairs.
Sense.
I can't remember.
Department of Revenue makes sense.
Yeah, there is somebody that's going to oversee it. But it's an added component, and like I said, nobody is going to say that we shouldn't have more skills. You're right, 50 hours on the road. That's what my son had to have, and
Boom.
But this is an additional 30 hours of, say, book training over and above what is already required. So, and sure, there's going to be other companies that are going to be able to step up and create the program, because you can bet that these companies, like your one listener texted in about, are not going to not do it. But the thing is, are they going to have it ready for rollout? 90 days after July 1st, or on July 1st, 90 days after session is over, when this goes into effect, are they going to have it ready for rollout that fast? Are they going to have a price point attached to it that fast? And again, it's still going to cost an additional amount of money. And likely that additional amount of money is going to be around the $100 fee that AAA charges, because that's what AAA has figured out to be the right price point.
Unbelievable. We're talking with Sherrie Peifer from Complete Colorado. Breaking news, in my opinion, in your article. I'm glad we're talking about it here. There's another one that caught my eye because of the law enforcement aspect of it. There is a bill. I was aware of this. This is a Representative Bacon bill, and it is going to prohibit arrest for petty offenses in the state of Colorado. What's going on?
Well, and I'm sure as a former DA, that petty offenses, 9 times out of 10, generally people aren't detained for them anyway. But this would prohibit nearly all types of petty offenses, theft under $300, check fraud, those kinds of things. This would prohibit all kinds of petty offenses. Law enforcement would not be allowed to arrest and detain anybody who is being charged with a petty offense. Well, some of those petty offenses are drug charges. Some of those petty offenses, or they're not drug charges. Let's say it's somebody, causing disorderly conduct, but the guy is higher than a kite and strung out on meth. I think in my story, the Weld County Sheriff, Steve Green, said it well. A lot of times you arrest these guys anyway and give them a night in jail to dry them out, to give them a chance to recollect their thoughts, or a place to sleep because they're homeless otherwise. And a lot of times they're arrested just because a night in jail could be a good thing for them. But even at that.
So some favorite quotes from your article I'm looking at right now is Representative Bacon's quote: "Public safety is served by responding to low-level offenses with increased services rather than custodial arrest, because non-prosecution of low-level offenses has been shown to reduce reoffending or recidivism for these populations." Recidivism is bunk, because if they haven't been held accountable the first time, they can't recidivate, right? Like, you can't commit another crime you've never been held for. But this idea that, like, one of the crimes you can't be arrested for anymore is public indecency, which includes a lewd fondling or caress of the body of another person. I'll be honest. That's the kind of thing I think maybe someone ought to be arrested for. How about a lewd exposure of an intimate part of the body? I don't agree. An act of sexual intercourse in public, by the way, in a public place. What are the services you're going to provide them? Hey, folks, how about a tent? You know, I mean, what is it you're going to, what services are going to be provided? And if we don't arrest him for that, what are we giving him? Just a love note to come to court? Like, hey, I'm scratching you a ticket. Can I put it between your body and hers right there? I'm just going to set it right there. You can make your mark or leave a little DNA. Either way, I'm good. I mean, what in the hell are we doing? This is craziness.
You know, there's no doubt. And I think it's just, well, and I think the key to this is exactly what worries Steve Raines. And that's that this is just the beginning, you know, because there was the bill last year or the year before that Pete Lee tried to run that would have prevented detainment on everything except for like first, second, and third class felonies. And this is that back door around that bill. Let's get this one in. And as soon as we get this one in, next year we can come back and we can,
this is the camel's nose under the tent. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
I am still interested in the logic, Sherrie, the whole idea that if we don't arrest someone for their conduct, they're less likely to do it again. Like, wait, what? You mean because we arrest someone for their public indecency, then they're going to be like, you arrested me for that? Well, guess what? I'm going to go do it again. Like, give me a break. Where are these studies from? Sorry. Mad Magazine?
It has to be. It has to be, because I'll tell you what, the stuff coming out of the state legislature right now is just, if you weren't living in Colorado, you wouldn't believe that it could happen.
It's bonkers stuff. And we're running out of time here, but have you had a chance to take a look at the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse for the Second Amendment, those 4 bills that are coming in to add in a waiting period, change the age at which you can purchase stuff? Have you looked at those?
I have not. I've not taken a chance to look at those yet. That kind of goes back to what I said earlier. You know, we see a bill that everybody else is doing. We let them do it because there's no need to repeat. We look at the stuff that nobody else seems to want to do. So I haven't had a chance to look at them yet, but they don't surprise me because they look just like all these other bills, all these other pieces of ordinances and stuff that I've been covering in the Denver metro area coming out of the local government. Now, I will say 3 days, that kind of the 3-day waiting period kind of does shock me a little bit because it's been 10 days everywhere else that it's passed or tried to pass.
Say that again. Say that last part again.
So one of those bills is a 10-day or is a 3-day waiting period.
Minimum 3 days.
Minimum 3 days.
Yeah.
Right. Everywhere locally where they've tried to pass local gun ordinances, that has been a 10-day waiting period. So, but in most places, that has not succeeded. I don't know that there's one where it has. I don't think, if I'm thinking correctly, not any single local ordinance has actually passed that 10-day waiting period. So that tells me that I think what they've seen, what the state has seen, is that there's enough pushback from the residents of those communities that they will have major pushback if they attempt 10 days at the state level too. So again, the camel nose under the tent, let's make it 3 days now. Next year we can increase that to 6 days. The following year we can increase that, and we can finally eventually get to that 10-day waiting period.
Listen, I'm glad, by the way, that you're focused on those other ones, because we would have never known about it. It feels like corruption. The only piece that's missing is that handoff of some value between AAA and Senator Faith Winter. But the coinky-dink here, that is, my guess is that the AAA legislative liaison lobbyist people drafted the bill and probably sold, say, Faith Winter on the idea that, hey, here would be something good. And either she asked them, hey, is this only going to benefit your company? Or she didn't. If she asked them and then advanced it, that feels like straight up corruption. If she didn't, it sounds like straight up incompetence. Like, how could you let an industry person come to you with a bill and not ask, how does this benefit you? No industry shows up and says, here's how we'd like to hurt our own business. I mean, nobody does that.
Correct. And either way is wrong. I mean, like you said, one way is corruption. The other way is, and I just lost my train of thought, the word, but yeah, just inept. She was inept. Sorry, I just lost my thought there. But yeah, I mean, either way was wrong. Wrong to begin with, all around.
This feels like something you ought to reach out to your good buddy Kyle from 9 News on and get him to do a next piece on this where they interview Faith. She could say no to you and ignore you. She can't say no to Kyle. Nobody from Denver can say no to Kyle.
Yeah, the key is getting Kyle to do the story. Kyle would have to follow Complete Colorado, and that's just not going to happen.
You know what? That's sad, because this seems like this is craziness. And you know that if the shoe were on the other foot and there was somebody else crafting some bill that would benefit some one particular business or something like that, that you would hear no end to it. No end to it.
There's absolutely. And I think the part that is being missed here is where the bill started, where the story started. And that is what's coming out of the state legislature this year is a much bigger problem, is a much bigger issue, in that there are so many refundable tax credits being handed out to certain sectors of Colorado that the Democrats have figured out another way around Tabor. Well, okay, so we can't keep all the money that we get and spend it the way we want. What we can do is we can offer tax credits that will go back to the people in the way of basically what a refundable tax credit is another way to refund the excess revenue that the state brings in under the Tabor measure. So we're picking and choosing again who gets the Tabor refunds, So right now we've got the tax credit for the driver's license bill. We have the tax credit for the para employees. And they're going to keep adding up these tax credits until all of the money that would normally go back to Colorado residents in the form of a Tabor refund is being given out to who they want to give it to.
This is also fantastic news you don't hear anywhere else. They are chiseling away at the Tabor refunds that, by the way, Polis recoined the Colorado Koshback during the election cycle, and they're going to chisel them away. This is also great reporting. Fantastic stuff.
And that's the biggest point of the whole picture here, is that they are literally picking and choosing who gets to keep the Tabor refund money.
Boy, this is crazy. They're just going to, again, another reason why we need you out there. Sherrie Peifer, Complete Colorado, page 2. Those were just 2 of the articles that we covered. We didn't even cover all the ones about the retail theft and the PUC and all that stuff, but they're all out there at Complete Colorado, page 2. Read them, share them, love them. Sherrie Peifer, we're going to let you go back to the bar.
Thanks, my friend. See you later.
See ya. Bye. Bye-bye. Hey, listen, when we come back, I'd love to get some of your thoughts on this as well. We're going to have, I should let you know, in the 9 o'clock hour, 9:03, we're going to have Aaron Wood on. He would like to be the chair of the state GOP. He was nice enough to get back and say he could do it then. So we're going to have that conversation. When you listen to Sherrie Peifer talk about these things, and I've had texters are texting in on this as well, interested in some of the things that we're doing. This car driver thing seems like a giant corrupt scheme. It is hard to imagine how this is going to truly benefit Coloradans more than it benefits AAA Colorado. The other piece, though, and that it was the very end of Sherrie's interview, very, very interesting. Maybe we'll get Michael Fields on to talk about this, that we are seeing the death of Tabor. They can't repeal it. It's too popular. They can't figure out a way around it unless if they reclassify a tax as a fee. But what they can do is chisel it away, tax refund by tax refund, and give it back to their hand-picked people, and then we don't get as much of the tax money that we overpaid. That right there is probably the biggest thing we got from Sherrie Peifer. Give us a call, 303-696-1971. It's George Brockman on The George Show. You're listening to 710 KNUS. George Brockler back with you, your 710 KNUS. My thanks to Sherrie Peifer from Complete Colorado. Page 2, great investigative reporter. 2 big reveals in that last interview. One, the Faith Winter bill that would steer every single kid looking to get a driver's license to one single provider of a statutorily mandated course run by AAA Colorado. That feels a lot like corruption. This is exactly the worst part of government, by the way. This is what makes government suck. Nobody's covering this except Sherrie. The other one, though, and I think this is a great insight, is this discussion of how we're whittling away the Tabor refunds. But then I look at the other, I've started scanning through Sherrie's articles here. I started looking at some of the things that I printed off for today, the things to talk about. HB 23-1100, that bill passing out of the crazy House. I think it's headed to the Senate now. I look at all these other things that are taking place with rent control passing out of the House, and apparently there's going to be a big in-depth story in the Denver Business Journal about it. I don't know if it can be derailed. My hope is that a Governor Polis who proclaims to be libertarian in all things economics would crush that, because it just doesn't work. It has never worked. It is not going to do what they want it to do. This is just government saying to greedy landlords. That's how they say everybody that makes money is greedy. If you're an employer, you're greedy. If you own land, you're greedy. It's not the people who expect you to give them things for free or overpay them for their work. That's not greed. The greed is not doing it. But I start to see all these things, and I'll be honest, folks, I'm getting weary. I mean, I'm getting worn out by how insurmountable this friggin' mountain looks in front of us. This is no longer, hey, if we just didn't have Trump on the ballot, or hey, if we just had, there's something else going on here. Colorado has fundamentally shifted. And this urban-rural divide has never been greater than it is now. And I start to ask myself, is there a tipping point for me about leaving the state of Colorado, which is crazy because my family's, and I'm not talking about like me just pick up and leave and kids, good luck, write to daddy, and he'll let you know how things are going. No, it's not like that. I mean, listen, the 2 big anchors for me into this state are my family, right? Like my immediate family, of course, and the kids and stuff. They're not out of school yet. And then my dad and my sister and her kids are here. And we have some other cousins and stuff that are here. That's really the number one thing that keeps me here. And I love Colorado, and I love Douglas County. Elbert County, of course, is still America, as is Lincoln County. But folks, things are changing so rapidly. And the problem is you can't protect yourself from the wingnuts at the Capitol, from the liberty haters in the Capitol, by simply saying, well, I'll just choose not to live in Denver. I'll just choose not to have to step over homeless people, drug addicts, mentally ill people, and face some sort of robbery on the 16th Street Mall. I'll just choose to live in Weld County, or I'll just choose to live in rural Adams County. And I just want to live my life, and you guys do whatever the hell you want to do with the Queen City. And Boulder, you can have at it too. You can run as many people out of your city based on taxes and regulations as you want. And you can make sure that it's all a bunch of rich white people and the handful of people of color who go do all the work you don't want to do. You can do that. But I want to live in Douglas County, or I want to live in El Paso County, or I want to live on the Western Slope or on the Eastern Plain. But now you can't. You can't just do that. You can't run away from this garbage because you've got such a progressive stronghold on the legislature. And Democrats in charge, left-leaning Democrats. There's no moderate Democrat who's got some statewide position in charge of these things. And you feel trapped. Feel like, well, I can't go anywhere. I can't choose a place to live within the state of Colorado where I can be free. I mean, you've got legislation out there that's going to try to prohibit someone in rural Adams County or the Eastern Plains. You're going to allow municipalities to regulate them out of being able to shoot predators on their property. Can't do it because they can regulate who can discharge firearms on their own private property. This is not like in the city kind of stuff. This isn't like shooting off guns to celebrate something. There's already laws for this. This is different. You can't get away from it. You know, you can't even expect your local government to stay out of the idea of what weapons you can own now because we've empowered them to do it. The taxes are going through the roof. It doesn't matter what you call them. I mean, I'm getting to the point, man, where there's like a state depression setting in on me. Like, what happened to Colorado? And I want to blame myself, but I don't know what more we can have, what we should have done, what we can do moving forward. I mean, some of the discussions that we're trying to have with the mayoral candidates from Denver, and it's a struggle, folks, to get them on the radio. I should tell you that. I mean, Andy Rougeau, yes. Kwame Spearman, that's great. My hat's off to him. We had Mike Johnson on once. I've been trying to get him on a couple more times. Listen, I'm a member of the Denver Police Department Foundation. And this afternoon, we're going to get a chance to interview or at least hear from each of the candidates that accepted the invitation to come talk to them. And, it's a public safety focused thing. And there's things I want to know. But I mean, I agree with Sherrie. Kind of what happens in Denver matters because the mistakes they make spill out into the rest of the metro area and beyond. But you kind of don't care anymore. You've kind of given up on, if you're like me, you've kind of given up on Denver. Like, why would I want to live there? What's the magic in Denver anymore? Car gets stolen, drug use everywhere, talking about passing safe injection sites to allow them to do that. Don't want to arrest people that have broken into the country and committed crimes. We want to outlaw local sheriffs from being able to have agreements with ICE, not to prosecute or investigate illegals or deport them, to just house them. We prevent agencies from sharing information with each other about illegals who pose a risk to Americans. Man, what the hell happened to Colorado? It's becoming harder and harder to be excited about getting up in the morning. And I'm telling you, driving into Denver yesterday, driving by the little homeless encampments that line this block or that block, like, what the hell happened? I used to come into town as a kid. I'm going back 30, 40 years now. As a kid, when my parents worked in the federal building out there at 19th and Stout, it was a different planet and a better planet at the time. Better. But I don't know, man. What does it take? What will it take have you had those conversations with your family? Have you thought to yourself, maybe I'm getting out? There are some great folks out of Elbert County, and they'll remain nameless, who after, even before the midterms, it was after the 2020 election, just decided that's it. We're picking up and moving, and they moved to South Dakota. And I can't tell you that there aren't times that I think to myself, yeah, South Dakota or Wyoming, if they could do something about the damn wind in Wyoming. But Wyoming, yeah, like 400,000 or 500,000 people jammed into a state the size of Colorado, and jammed is being sarcastic. Yeah, man. No wonder Yellowstone is popular. It is The Sopranos, by the way, in Montana. You know that. You've picked up on that. But the idea of being able to live at a place where, I don't know, manual labor still matters. You had land. People aren't rubbing up against you, telling you how to live your life. The only thing you have to worry about is those greedy other corporate bastards trying to encroach on your giant 1,000,000-acre ranch or whatever. I mean, I don't know. And I've known people that have picked up and moved to Florida. I know other folks who are telling me this is our timeline for leaving Colorado. Are you there? I mean, this legislative session is just a gut punch on a lot of different levels. We can't even arrest people anymore for, you can't arrest them. You got to provide them wraparound services, no pun intended, for the people that are out there in the park having sex in front of your kids. That's not an arrestable offense, because Representative Bacon says we know that if you don't arrest them for that, they're less likely to do it again. Excuse me? What? I don't know, man. I just, I'm frustrated. I'd love to hear from you and either talk me off the ledge or push me, but 303-696-1971, this state is just so different and not in a positive way. I mean, the economy's been crushed. We've seen that. We're about to get punched right in the junk with the gas taxes. Gas fees. That's coming. That was delayed so that the governor could get reelected. And we don't have to deal with it for a while. We've got, my God, the attorney general who campaigned on, I don't know anything about criminal justice and it's irrelevant, now appointed to his second judicial district to run the show out there. I mean, this state is as ass backwards as I've ever seen it. And I don't know what's the light at the end of the tunnel. It can't be that next election cycle. I mean, look, folks, we're not winning any statewide races for a while. Honestly, it doesn't matter who our candidates are. There is a shift in the electorate, and you can see why. We cater to them. Oh, we want to attract people who are into marijuana. Let's legalize marijuana. I'm sure tons of conservative people flock to Colorado. No. The hard-working folks that are like, man, I love working 60 hours a week to take care of myself, but I would like me some weed. I'm moving to Colorado. They didn't come either. And then we got all these other bills that simply tell you you have too much. You don't deserve what you have. Your property isn't really for you. It's for others. Camping ban, we would reluctantly have one. I'm not going to enforce that. They want to take more from the people that produce and give more to those who don't. Rent control? Are you kidding? I don't know, man. If you just read through the bills that are making it out of committee, you spit up in your mouth. Like, where the hell are we going? Part of me wants to say you can have it. Let's see you get every damn thing you want. And let's see what Colorado you create out of that. We're already seeing the population surge we've been experiencing for all those years that we were arguably purple. We've already seen that turnaround. Numbers are changing. I mean, Denver, my God, they have to shutter schools. They have such a decrease in population of the kids out there going to schools. I wonder why that is. That's amazing. Why wouldn't you want to raise your family at Safe Injection Site City? That doesn't make any sense. It's good for people. It's really the right thing to do. It's the humane thing to do. Why wouldn't you want to walk them by the safe injection site and say, hey, look, there's another guy ruining his life with drugs. We're helping him to do it. We're making him safer for doing it. That's what you need to learn, son. Or the drag shows at the libraries and people defending them. Like it's discrimination to say, I don't want my kid to watch a drag show. You got boys playing on girls' teams because they've claimed they're not boys anymore. Does that make us a better people? I mean, the next generation that just stops seeing gender, that's going to make us a better people? Really? I don't know, folks. I'm just kind of pissed off and fed up. I don't know what to do about it. Listen, I want to get to the phones here. I've kind of winded my way through this last segment, but Jim and other folks calling in, 303-696-1971. Are you there yet? Have you had that? Even if you're not there yet, have you at least looked at your spouse or looked at your buddy or looked at your kids and said, guys, we got to move. We got to think about an exit strategy from this place. 303-696-1971. George Brockler here. Let me tell you about one of the bright spots, though, for Colorado. If you're looking for a reason to stay, it's dudes like Dan Caplis. Because you know that this guy stands up and fights for you, no matter what the legislature does to the law to make it harder to achieve justice or to protect your family. This guy, who's been a staple in Colorado since he wandered out here from Illinois, from Chicago, on an Evans scholarship, because that's what caddies get, by the way. So, you know, this dude isn't coming from the upper crust Boulder area. This is a guy who, his dad was a career police officer in Chicago PD. Salt of the earth mom, wanders out here with his Evans scholarship to Boulder, and then becomes one of those attorneys that you turn to when you're in need and say, help me, man, help me. And he doesn't ask how much money do you have in your pocket? What part of the state are you from? What are your politics? He doesn't care about any of that. Dude just cares about helping getting you justice in a system where it becomes harder and harder and harder to do that every year. And yet somehow this guy's still banging it out of the park. Easy way to get a hold of him. And if you're on the YouTube, you can see right now the advertisement on there with the number 303-770-5551, 303-770-5551. He and Bobber, and I'm looking at this picture, Bobber looks the exact same age he did 16 years ago when I tried his first case with him, but he has facial hair. I don't remember him having facial hair before, so he's obviously made the change, which is great. Also a fantastic trial attorney who will fight for you. Look him up, dancaplisLaw.com, CAPLIS.com, dancaplisLaw.com. That's a guy, by the way, who my guess is has never had the conversation I'm having with you right now, and that I'm going to have with Jim and the others that are calling in. This is a guy who's committed to this state no matter what, because he is endlessly optimistic about fixing this state. I want Dan to be right, and you want Dan to help you if you get hurt. So check him out, dancaplisLaw.com, 303-770-5551. George Brockler. When we come back, you, me, and 303-696-1971. Out here. George Brockler right back with you here, 710 KNUS. We're going to go to the phone lines. And listen, I'm going to keep this conversation up because there are a ton of texts here. I want to read some of these on air. I just don't have enough time to do it within this hour. But you stick around. We're going to continue this. I need this. You're helping me. It's cathartic for me because this is just, God, I want to use the F word. I don't know where Stephen keeps the beep button, but damn, man, my state is going to hell. And I've always suspected this, that, and the other. And then I listen to Sherrie Peifer and I look at the bills and I think, sweet mother of God, how are we ever going to extricate ourselves from this pit? Jim from Englewood, you're on 710. What's the answer, man?
First off, I just want to say, thank God you have said what you just said, because I've been waiting since you got on the air, like after Peter, for you to chime in on this. This is unbelievable. I mean, we're so ready to go. We've got our plans. As soon as my wife retires, we're out.
How long till your wife retires? And Jim, what was that moment, right? Because I've been feeling this way, increasingly over the last couple of years. And I'm finally at this point where I'm just like, God, it can't be fixed. Like, is this unfixable? What was it for you? Where'd you get to that?
It's, when you just look at on every turn, we have no voice. We are being silenced. We're being canceled. And I'm done. I'm not a native. I got here in the mid 80s. I love this place. I mean, I was born to be here, and I will tell you now, we're done. We are so done. What was the straw that broke the camel's back? It's a million straws.
Where have you guys looked at going? And when will your wife retire? Give us the idea.
She's got a little bit yet. We've got about 8 years. So, we're really trying to plan this out well. We're looking at Wyoming. The only reason I hate to say that is, they're not liking us coming up there. And, I hate that part of it. But, we want to get our, 100 acres. And,
where are you doing this?
Wyoming.
Yeah, see, Wyoming seems awfully attractive, man, because you're still here with the Rockies. You're just up by 25. Yep. If you had to brave it, man, you could pack a little heat for the moment, drive down to a Mile High and watch a game if you wanted to. It's attractive to me. Jim, I'm sorry you're there, because what I think is folks that think like us and have our values and our principles, we're the ones that are thinking of going. Somehow we have lost this state, and I'm not sure we can get it back.
I agree.
Jim, thanks for the phone call, man. I appreciate that. Hey, listen, Ted and everybody else, Jim's line is open, 303-696-1971. If you're there, what was that moment? What was the thing that put you in the I'm looking to get out of here column? And if you're not there, what the hell will it take? What would it take to get you there? 303-696-1971. Listen, tons of texts. I'm just going to have to read them during the break, and then I'm going to try to put them on air here and read them. I'll look at the tube text as well. But stick around. This is a conversation worth having, folks. This is our state. It's George Brockler, 710 KNUS. Rockler right back with you here, 710 KNUS. Full phone lines. I'll let you know as they come open. Here are some of the texts that we have been receiving since we started this conversation. The problem is, George, those people that voted the Dems into power are moving out to other areas and voting for the same things that ruined Denver. You are correct. Highlands Ranch, where we lived for years and years, I mean, from 96 to 2014. So a long time, almost 20 years we lived out there, and I have seen it change significantly. And you're right. In fact, for the very first time, Douglas County voters out of Highlands Ranch have voted for a Democrat representative in the House. Never done that before. Hopefully never do it again. But I think you're right. The bluing of the other areas is true. Here's another text. Sadly, I completely agree. I love Colorado. I live in Adams County, which is now 100% Democrat county commissioners. Aurora, which is 50-50 crazy, and a state legislature that has lost their minds. I've never wanted to leave until the last year or two. Wyoming or Texas or Idaho, so Idaho twice, are starting to look a lot better. I hate to walk away, but I think we've gone past the tipping point. Another, yes, unfortunately, this is our buddy Corey with Alyssa leaving for college out of state, probably going to retire and move out of state, probably Texas. Oh, buddy, that's a gut punch right there. The Democrats are also pushing hard to eliminate state preemption, uniformity, to give local control to municipalities. By the way, selectively, right? Like they're not going to give local control on issues like abortion, just your guns. And they can't ratchet down the restrictions. It's not like they're saying local control, whatever you want to do with handguns. They're like, here's the floor below which you can't fall. You want to overregulate them? Go right ahead, Boulder. But you have to at least have this much regulation, which, for example, in Highlands Ranch would mean you have to have Highlands Ranch, Littleton, and Douglas County making rules that could affect the way people do business. Look at this statewide, could get real hard to function. Agree with you. Listen, I want to get right to the phone lines here. I promised Ted if he hung on, we'd take him. Ted, you're on 710. What do you think?
Okay. My moment was, had a meeting with the number 2 guy in the Attorney General's office on another matter.
How long ago?
This was right after marijuana passed.
Okay.
And he was drafting regulations on marijuana, just come back from the governor's office. And we had, if you get a half hour with these guys, that's good. But we got a half hour of the evils of marijuana. And then he said, I'm sorry, I'm stressed. Now let's talk about what you came to talk about. And he outlined everything and was wrong by half because it's twice as bad as he, talked about what the consequences were going to be by legalizing marijuana. And that was my watershed moment. I think things have just gone downhill from there. I'm in my 80s. I have bought land, but mine's in Fairmount. So I will be here in Colorado for the rest of eternity. But
yeah. Where would you go, Ted? Where would you go if you could? And I see you live in Denver. Where would you move to?
I'd go to Wyoming.
Why Wyoming? That's the second one. Why Wyoming versus any other option that you have out there? Some folks saying Idaho, South Dakota, Texas.
Other than the fact that the longest football rivalry in the West, and maybe the second longest in the United States, is between the Colorado State Rams and the Wyoming Cowboys.
Cowboys, yeah, that's a big one.
Well, no, we took some people up, you love this, and they were someone from the East, and they were a group. It was a business thing, and we went up there to the game. One of the women asked, they said, do they check for guns at the stadium in Laramie? And, our host was saying, oh, yeah, but, if you don't have one, they'll lend you one. And
that is, Ted, that is funny stuff.
So why would you live in Denver?
I got to believe other states are now looking at Denver as what not to do, right? Like if you're an even moderate state, let alone conservative, if you're a Wyoming or whatever, you're looking at Denver and saying, what can we do to prevent that from happening here? I mean, this place, it's making my heart hurt to think about what we've done to the state and what's still on the agenda for the rest of this bat guano crazy legislative session. I mean, it could get worse. It's just amazing. We're not talking about making the state better. It's making it worse. And Ted, I don't know. I don't know. But
one of the big things that turned New York City into a city of slums was the creation of rent control, and they didn't take it off at the end of World War II. And frankly, the local banks couldn't make mortgages and so forth in the city. A lot of them invested in Colorado. A lot of our subdivisions that were financed by New York savings banks after World War II through the Korean War and, into the 1960s and early 1970s were New York banks because they couldn't make loans in because of rent control and other of these regulations in the city and the state of New York. I mean,
rent controlled apartments will never be the same quality they'd be if you could have the economy drive the rent. It just won't be. No landlord is going to invent in a property where they're constantly losing money. They'll do the math and they'll figure out what's the minimum I have to do in order to just get by because I'm getting crushed by rent control. And you know who doesn't care? The legislature is so smart, Ted. They know everything.
Well, what happens when you look at when you control the income, the one thing you can't control is the expenses. So if you can underwrite an apartment mortgage and you look at the expenses and so forth, and you get the debt service coverage, but 2 years later, your expenses, and if you have a certain population, your maintenance expenses are going to be higher. If you have needles and stuff, you have to deal with all of that stuff. It's going to be higher. And of course, your properties just deteriorate and go down and you create slums.
Ted, I agree with you. And I appreciate the call, my man. I am thankful you're sticking around. I'm sorry. It's for the reasons that you're like, hey man, I'm 80. I've got property here, but I'm not going to take off, but I'm glad that you're still with us. 303-696-1971. Ted's line is open. Have you reached that moment yet? And when was it? What was the thing that caused you to think there are texters here that are texting in, we have a plan. Here's when 93 Buff moved back to Green Bay 7 years ago. Dang, man. Tubbs and George gonna go Thelma and Louise. Am I driving or a Stefan? I don't know. Push you, George. You strike back like a F child. I think you meant effing child. But yeah, I'm a counterpuncher. Sound familiar? You hit on the head, George, that morning. That monologue fired me up. We have to put in the work locally and statewide to balance things put in this great state. I agree, but do you believe it can matter at this point? I mean, is this one of those things where we're just now looking around going, what in the hell has happened, and it's not fixable? Chris from Westminster, you're on 710. Chris, what do you think?
If conservatives leave the state of Colorado, then the communists get the whole state. I think the counties, the rural counties, should splinter off and join neighboring red states or form their own.
There was that effort. You remember when Hickenlooper was governor and it was like Weld County and some of the others kind of up in that northeast part of the state had thought to secede. I don't even know if it's legally possible, but what you're describing is that same sense of, I want to leave a state I can't fix. I mean, do you believe that, Chris? We're at a place now where there's no fixing it. We can't change things.
Weld County has energy and beef, and the capital is hostile to both of those things. The Polis's buddy, the agriculture secretary or whatever, I mean, he's never held a shovel in his life, and he's running the agriculture. Why would Weld County take orders from Denver? They should just splinter off and go to Nebraska, Oklahoma, Wyoming. And I mean, if you look at an electoral map, county by county, it's little flecks of blue on a red background, on a sea of red. By the way, how did we get red? Why did the conservatives?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Chris, are you still in Westminster, and have you given thought to you and maybe you and the family picking up and going?
We've got property in Texas, and we're looking that way.
When you think about making that decision, is there a moment that has happened, or are you waiting for it to happen? Are you on the road to it, or have you already decided in your heart, no, we're done. There's just nothing more we can do with Colorado?
We got a kid in high school, so we're probably going to tough it out. And I got to say, our eyes are open. We're looking for all that woke counterculture stuff, and we just don't see it happening in Adams County. But I mean, it's all over social media. It's all over, it's just everywhere. So I don't know. I just think that's the only answer. If the states splinter off, then, we're going to have civil war. But if the counties break away, that would give the conservatives so much more power. And then if it ever became more than a discussion, we win, because we could turn off their food and their power.
I just want the state to take a similar approach with the counties that the feds take with the states that we set up through the Constitution. And that is a little more laboratory, right? And a little less mandate. Like if you want to let Boulder put whatever regulations they want to on firearms, I don't like it. I think the Second Amendment should trump that. But if you're going to go down that road, then let Douglas County and Weld County do the same, but in any direction. Right? Like less, I mean, I imagine for Weld County, it would be Katie bar the door, right? Like the regulations on firearms would be pretty de minimis. And then let's see what happens. Let's see where crime is the worst. Pretty sure it's not Weld County. I feel pretty comfortable with that, but we refuse to let those laboratories exist because we want to bend people to our will. I heard somebody, it was a few years ago out on the campaign trail, when we were talking about the rural urban divide, and they're like, I don't know why we continue to subsidize the existence of people who don't want to live in cities. Like, why do we keep trying to make their communities livable? They should all move into the cities. And I thought, what are you talking about? I mean, that is the most hubris laden, elitist attitude I think I've ever heard.
Why are people in rural counties feeding and giving energy to the people in the city? I mean, it goes both ways.
Listen,
we need each other.
Clearly, in the zombie apocalypse, I think you'd much rather be in the rural counties. I mean, those are folks that are going to make it. If the cities go down, those folks live on. If the rurals go down, cities shut down too. I mean, the city needs the rurals far more than the rurals need the city.
Sometimes you feel like, the government is trying to kill us all, but we're going to be fine. I mean, it's the people that live in the cities that are completely dependent on other people for their food and their transportation. They're done. Well, we'll be out here fishing and shooting deer, and we'll be all right.
Chris, you and I are in the same boat where I've still got, my youngest is still 5 years away from graduating, but I was telling Billy off the air, I mean, when they're all gone, I got to believe there's a conversation about, do we need to be here? I mean, if the kids are going to be coming quote unquote home anyway, is home Colorado? Is home where we are? I mean, what is it? You know what I mean? Like that's a bigger discussion. And I want to be someplace where they'd want to bring grandkids or even raise them and all that. That's another discussion. But buddy, I'm so frustrated because I love this state. It's the only home I've ever known. And it just breaks my heart to see where we're going. And that legislature is a dumpster fire, man. The policies that they're pushing for and the things they're putting in law, I don't know, man. I don't get it. But Chris, thank you for the phone call. Thanks for commiserating with me. Chris's line is open, 303-696-1971. Alexa, Don, and the other folks calling in right now. And I'll just keep telling you when the lines open up. We need this. I need this. I mean, selfishly, I need this. Here's one. Yes, my husband and I are, quote, there. Just had a conversation with friends last night about whether or not they're thinking moving out of Colorado because we are. Damn. Well, tell me what that moment was and where you'd go. That's what I'm interested in. Where do you go if you leave Colorado? Here's another one. Loved your rant. Thank you. Someone, Colorado didn't vote for marijuana legalization, but was on the fence. But today I strongly believe that was the start of the fall of Colorado. You and I agree, brother, because there's not a single thing that flowed from recreational marijuana legalization in 2012 that has made this state better. It has not attracted a smarter, more productive group of people. It hasn't made us healthier. None of it. Yes, we plan to move like you, kids in school, but when they're out, we plan to leave Colorado. Heartbreaking, man. I wonder how many of us there are out there. George, I grew up here, but I'm considering leaving the state for a couple years. I'm now adamant about leaving in a couple years when my son graduates high school. It's not one thing, but my truck was broken into and tools stolen. Cops did nothing. And now the gun grabbers are getting worse, along with the high cost of living. Colorado is just Eastern California now. It's a lost cause. That would be the reason to go. If you don't think, it's not that Colorado isn't worth saving. I think the issue is, can Colorado be saved? And when people ask, saved from whom? Saved from the left-wing progressive nuts that have told us up is down and men are women and women are men and religion is wrong, but the religion of the state is right. And that I'm somehow a bad person because I don't want my kids and little kids to be subjected to drag queen book time at the library. What the hell has happened to us? I mean, we're just beyond tolerance. It's not about tolerance anymore. I can respect where we've gone there. It's now beating you down into submission and telling you your values suck so bad, we're going to make it impossible for you to live them. 303-696-1971. Alexa, you're on 710 KNUS. What do you think?
Hey, George. First of all, you need to go look into 15-minute cities that they're trying to push in the U.S.
What's that?
Have you heard?
No, what is it?
It's where everything that you need is within a 15-minute walk or bicycle ride. Your shopping, your work. So I know you can bike to KNUS, but I think you have other gigs.
I do. I could do it. I'd have to get up way early.
Yeah, but and Cleveland has just said that they're going to implement this.
What?
So, and so you basically, they don't want you to leave your 15-minute city. So, I hope you don't have any friends more than 15 minutes from your house either. So,
well,
it's a crazy concept.
Is the idea that are we doing that because we think it's better for Gaia, for Mother Earth, or it's better because what's the reasoning behind it?
Well,
it's better for COVID.
The supposed reason, which is I didn't actually call to talk about this, but when you were talking about 15 minutes, the supposed reason, of course, is going to be climate crisis and all that other stuff.
Crazy.
But if you can control people to live in, tell them where they live and tell them what they can do and what they can eat. I mean, I think there's another agenda behind it. But
are you, and Alexa, you're a Coloradan, right? Like I still run into you from time to time here and there. Yeah. Where was high school again? Tell me this.
Arapahoe.
You were a Warrior. Back when they had probably the non-PC logo for the Warriors.
Exactly.
Are you at that point yet? Or when you look at the state, like, listen, we come onto the talk radio all the time lately to bitch and moan about what's going on at the state, but this is maybe the first time I'm thinking it's too late. We can't fix this state anymore.
For now, I have to stay here due to a family member with chronic illness. But if that changes, I probably would consider leaving, which would break my heart because, I've lived in several areas, but I've lived within, 30 minutes of where I grew up almost my entire life.
Where would you go? Have you thought about it? What states appeal to you?
Wyoming, because they have one of the lowest crime rates. Texas and Florida, maybe South. I'm not sure I could go too much north of Wyoming.
So listen, South Dakota, I told Billy I like it because it has the word South in it, and it makes me think that it's not as cold as North Dakota, which of course North Dakota is really just Canada South. That and Minnesota. In fact, a lot of people don't know this. We gave them back to Canada years ago. Nobody's known. They haven't redrawn the lines. But Wyoming, if I could find the not windy place in Wyoming, it's super attractive just because there are people there, good people, low crime, lots of land. You could build a place where people aren't up in your business, and the legislature seems largely sane. I mean, when they're sending out resolutions to the governor of California saying, "Hey, you and your electric cars suck it," you know what I mean? Like, okay, daddy like,
Well, you look at Denver, which just reduced speed limits from 25 to 20 miles an hour in the city, supposedly with the idea that it would reduce pedestrian deaths, and they spent $2 or $3 million on all the sign changes. Well, come to find out, another study was done, and the largest cause of pedestrian deaths are pedestrians.
What? You can't blame the victim. You're blaming the victim.
I'm blaming the victim. And I don't think it matters whether you walk out in front of a car, whether the car is going 20 or 25 miles an hour.
That's true.
Different scenario at 2 miles an hour versus 60.
Yeah.
But at the same time, one of the Colorado legislatures is looking at motorcycle lane splitting. That was in your news a couple weeks ago.
I saw that too. Yep. Scary stuff.
So we want to save pedestrians. I mean, I don't know if you've been on the highway, but that lane change signal doesn't seem to work in most cars on the highway. It's really weird. But that just seems like a death wish.
Can you imagine, now you have to contend, not only as you're changing lanes with the other cars in the other lanes, but some flea-like mosquito shooting between you as you start to drift over into that center lane. There are going to be transformer-like scenes, just machines spinning through the air all over I-25 and I-70.
I saw, I know you've talked about it, I saw that motorcycle cop that was hit at University in Colorado. I mean, I was at that intersection when I saw him hit. I saw him and his motorcycle fly in the air, come crashing down.
Dang.
It's just horrible. And why would you bring legislation? One of the comments was that it was about reducing emissions. And I'm like, motorcycles? Are we talking about motorcycles?
Right.
I don't know how much
Right.
emissions motorcycles do, but yeah, it is crazy, and it's really sad. And I don't know why any business would come to Colorado, and especially to Denver,
unless you're in the marijuana business, and even then, that market is kind of struggling. Alexa, don't leave us yet, okay? Wait till I go. I'll send word back how it is.
Exactly. Well, I'll follow you and take Bart with you too. So
exactly,
it sounds like he has lots of tools. So
Bart will survive the zombie apocalypse, folks. Bart will do it. Alexa, thanks for the phone call. Thanks for the friendship. Thanks for that sweet sweatshirt too, sister. Alexa's line is open, 303-696-1971. Here's what I promise you, Don, Jim, Lynn, the texters. You keep it pouring in, and it is pouring in, and we're going to continue to have this cathartic moment. Before I cut you loose, though, I need to tell you about, we're talking about whether or not you'd move. Look, if you're looking to sell your house, this is separate from buying your house, and they're great at this too. If you're looking to sell, because I don't know, maybe you're relocating somewhere into the rural parts of the state, or maybe you're looking to leave the state. And frankly, if you remember when Gaye Ribble, our buddy from Empower Home Team, Keller Williams, when she was in studio, and a couple of months ago, when she was in studio, she told us that she is having an increasing number of folks who are selling their homes but not buying others in Colorado. They are relocating, and that's been going on since the pandemic. Maybe we're just now starting to catch up to that trend, but check them out. And I say that because they do Empower Home freeworkshops.com. That just makes you smarter. It doesn't cost you anything. You just get smarter about the whole biz there. You sign up with them. They sell your house for on average $30,000 more than other average realtors. That's a big, big deal. You got to figure out a way to get on their radar and get them and get yourself on their radar, because these are the top-notch professionals in the real estate market out there. So if you're looking to go, why not put as much dough in your pocket as you can before you, I don't know, Wyoming, South Dakota, Idaho, Texas, Florida, heard a bunch of those states. I'd love to know where you're thinking about going to, but check them out. You can find them at gayhasthebuyers.com. That's GAYE hasthebuyers.com, or you can give them a call at 833-301 SOLD 831. I'm thinking about South Dakota and Wyoming, and somehow I've lost my mind. 833-301 SOLD 833-301 sold. That's Gay with Empower Home Team, Keller Williams. Check them out and stick around. We're going to continue to have this needed conversation with you. George Brockler on the George Show, 710 KNUS. What's up right here, 710 KNUS, George Brockler back with you. We've just got the one line open. Fill it up at 303-696-1971. Colorado, it's not a love it or leave it thing. It is, are you ready to leave it? Have you reached that tipping point? And maybe I've talked myself into it with this discussion with Sherrie Peifer in the 7 o'clock hour and looking at some of the articles she's written and my experience at the Capitol yesterday. And buddy, this state is a dumpster fire, it seems like, of policy. And it's, I don't know if it's fixable. Can we fix it? Is it worth fighting for? Yes. Can it be won? Can it be fixed? Or is this it? Here's some of the tube text right here. If I were your age, I would move. Well, it's still relatively easy. This is from Ron. As you get older, it becomes more difficult. I'm 73, and it's too late for me and many others. Been here since 1956. Dude, you've seen the state change quite a bit. I'm with many others on the marijuana front. I was on the fence at first, and then you see the effects that MJ culture has. Destructive. Yeah, I'm still looking for someone to call up and say, we're a better state that we've legalized marijuana because this happened. I'm not sure what that is. Good luck explaining a 15-minute city to a rhino. That's JR from the road. He's our truck driver conspiracy theorist. GOP in the same library, if not on the same page, could help slow the blue Borg. Not naive enough to expect kumbaya, but uneasy alliances between establishment and grassroots would be possible. I asked Aurora police officers if they ever saw homeless before marijuana legalization, and they said no. More, I like where you are going with this. What the hell happened to Denver thing? But what's your theory on why? What is the purpose? Why do we keep voting in the type of people that want to actively destroy our state? What is the end game? And to answer your question, I'm so ready to get out of here. If I could convince my wife to leave, we would leave this afternoon. Wow. Hot Springs, South Dakota, in the Black Hills, much like Evergreen, but definitely not woke. I believe that. Dang. Denver will be the next Detroit. Yikes. Less than 2 years, and we're out to Florida. COVID exposed schools to me, and I want them out of this school system, especially since the Jeffco board is all blue. And there's just more like this. I'm going to try to get through them, but I don't know. I mean, there's some folks here that are, hey, if conservatives leave the state will lose delegates and thus lose its power. Not a good solution every way for Colorado. Yeah, I think you're right. And yet, so what? And when I say so what, I mean, I've got to be subjected to this garbage pouring out of the Gold Dome and take all the results of the bad policies from Denver and just try to continue to thrive in this environment, because if I leave, we lose voting power. I mean, maybe Colorado's gone, man. I don't want to believe that. Maybe it's just gone. We have no voice at all in the Capitol, no voice at all in state government, no voice at all in Denver. I don't know. 303-696-1971. That's our number. This is Don from Arvada. Don, what do you think?
Hi, George.
Hey, sir.
Like your show.
Thank you.
First time calling in.
Thanks for doing it.
My watershed moment was here about a year ago. My family homesteaded here in 1879.
Wow.
And since then, we've had our family businesses throughout the generations, always been small business owners. I have a business that's about 35 years old. I employ about 11 people, and we've been able to make it work. But when Colorado voters passed the Colorado Family Leave Act, I was scratching my head trying to figure out, how do I make this new law work in my company? So the law allows people to take 90 days off once a year if they need to for family medical leave, things like that. And I'm certainly not against people having quality time to spend with their families. But as a business owner, you have to make the bottom line work. And so that law prevents the employers from eliminating that position and replacing it with someone else if they need to. You have to leave that position open for that employee to come back. And so in a small business, you could have 2-3 people taking that 90-day leave at the same time. It would effectively shut down your business. So when I wrote in and talked to the legislature about it, the response was, well, we understand there's going to be some pain with this law, but isn't it good that we can help the people? Again, we would do everything we could to accommodate an employee's needs here, but I can't operate with 3 desks vacant and having to keep those desks open. It just isn't feasible. So
Don, if I
we
could,
bought a second home in Phoenix.
Okay. And is that where you
fold it fold it up and move.
Oh my God, permanently, not even like snowbirding stuff. You're talking about like permanently moving.
We're going to snowbird for as long as I can do it, and then move down there permanently.
Don,
Colorado is not what it used to be, George.
No, it's not. Where did you go to high school, by the way?
Arvada.
Oh my gosh, you were a Redskin back when they were allowed to be Redskins.
You can't say that.
No, you can't. No, you can't. And then they were the Reds, and now I think they're the Tulips or something. I can't remember what their thing is. But
I don't have any idea.
Don,
Right,
if I could take up the mantle of Faith Winter, who helped usher in that family garbage, you're rich. And I know that because you're a business owner, and all business owners are super rich, and you can certainly afford to tighten your belt to allow these super hardworking employees 3 months off at a time for different things related to childbirth or caring for an ill person or whatever. That would be easy for you to do.
And my response to that is, it's not about the money. It isn't. It's about getting the work done in an office. My people it takes about a year to train them to do their position. And you can't bring somebody in temporarily and provide the service levels we have to provide to our clients to keep them on the books. So it's my existing staff would have to cover those shortages, and you can't ask other people to work double duty, even if you offer to pay them more.
It makes sense to me, man. How do you bring on someone for 3 months? How do you hire someone and say, I'm only hiring you for 3 months because someone had to take leave? So, I mean, what kind of employee pool of talent are you going to get with that? Might turn into more, might not, but you should only expect 3 months. Who's going to take that job, especially in this environment? Don, can I ask, did you pick Arizona because of the climate, the economy? I mean, they have a Democrat governor now. It was that Katie Hobbs woman who hid in her basement and campaigned like Biden to win. Why did you pick Arizona?
Well, I bought it because at the time it was more conservative, and I bought the house a little over a year ago. But yeah, the elections changed a lot of things down there too. I don't know if there's any place that's safe anymore. But when you look at what's going on in Colorado, it's more than just the people down in the General Assembly. It's like this bill that passes. It's the voters. The voters have a different mindset.
Agreed. This is our democracy at work. Like, I don't think these people got here by fraud. They got here by the will of the voters. But what that's telling me is we have more than 50% of the voting electorate now who thinks completely differently than I do about the role of government and the role of freedom and liberty. And it's like, well, now what? When a majority of people feel like government is the place to turn, and that, Don, you have all the resources to make their little magical social policies happen, what's the end? When do they stop putting their hand in your pocket? I don't know that there's an end to
Well, again, if you can't run a business because you can't staff it and you can't effectively serve your customers, then you're out of business. And I know they don't care about that. It's unlike Hillary Clinton said back when she was trying to pass the Health Care Act, and they brought up the fact that some of the costs would eliminate people's profits. And her response was, well, we can't be concerned about every undercapitalized business in the country. When you're talking 10%, there's a lot of businesses that make a profit margin of 10%, and that's successful. So that kind of mindset with your government thinking, we're not concerned about the casualties. We're only looking at the social good we think we can provide.
Well, Don, I think you've said it pretty well. I'm sorry to be losing you, especially since your family traces back to the early days of the state. Phoenix, we'll still see you for baseball games as you beat up on our underfunded and hapless Rockies. Don, thanks for the call. Thanks for being a first-time caller, man.
You bet.
Thanks, buddy. Hey, 303-696-1971 is the number. Don's line is open. Lynn, I think we lost you there for a second, but you're back. 710 KNUS.
Good morning, George. My problem with the state of Colorado is our justice system is kapunk. My husband was murdered in our home during a home invasion.
Yeah, you remember you telling me that. Sorry.
Yeah, he spent 6 calls on 911 asking to be taken to a mental facility, asking to be taken to jail, and a judge let him go after he has spent 18 years or half of his life in jail, part of it at the ADX, and a judge let him go on his personal recognizance. He had $40 to his name. He came to our house to rob us and killed my husband. And guess what? There's nothing there. It's just gone.
So
my life totally.
Lynn, I get it. There is a
complete
complete breakdown in the focus on public safety. We have an offender-centric legislature in a way that we've really the last 10 years has been an offender-centric legislature. It doesn't surprise anyone that Democrat governors appoint judges who aren't tough on crime. That's just how it happens. That's part and parcel of how it goes. They're picking judges for different reasons, like demographics and, political payoffs, and not prosecutors as much as defense attorneys and others. Not that those people can't be good judges, but I think we've seen the fruits of their labor. Let me ask you this, Lynn. Are you thinking of leaving, or are you just here for the long haul?
I'm thinking of leaving, but let me say one other thing.
Sure.
Is that it seems to me that if you listen, they tell you all over the place. If you need help, there's help for you. Here's somebody who's asking for help, begging for help. 6 calls to 911 and let go on personal recognizance because they didn't think he would harm himself. And where am I thinking of leaving to? Quite honestly, for years, I have been thinking that the Rust Belt is going to reemerge. The Rust Belt housing is affordable.
What about the politics of the Rust Belt? You like the politics? Do you think it's more conservative?
Water issue. Depends upon where you go. And I just think that the Rust Belt has affordable housing. It has good infrastructure is now good where it wasn't good, 40 years ago. And I'm thinking the Rust Belt, even though the weather is not the same, it's going to reemerge. And that's where I'm going to go.
Lynn, I'd be sorry to lose you, but I get it, especially the life that you've been forced to live because of a failed criminal justice system, especially when it comes to your husband. And I'm so sorry for your loss, ma'am. And thank you for listening and calling in. Lynn's line is open. That's the only one that's open. You can fill it. 303-696-1971. Chad, Brian, Chad, everyone else. And I'll get to some of these texts as well. We're going to continue to have this conversation. Like I said, man, there's a catharsis for me in talking to other people who are like-minded, but I'm looking for someone to talk me off the ledge here and tell me that it's going to be all better. Maybe that'll be in the 9 o'clock hour with Aaron Wood, who's going to join us. He's seeking to be the chair of the state GOP. We'll ask him some of these questions as well. But give us a call at 303-696-1971. Before I cut you loose, though, I want to tell you about our good buddy Mitch Flory with the Art of Granite. For those folks that are in their home and they're not looking to sell, maybe they're looking to beautify it because they're in it for the long haul. Maybe they're looking to upgrade it because they know they're going to want to sell in the next few years and they want to make it as valuable as possible. Single biggest, bestest, fastest thing you can do is to improve those countertops in your kitchen and in your master bathroom. And if you're on the YouTube right now, you can see pictures of some of the stuff here that Mitch has done. Don't be fooled by the name Art of Granite with a T. It's not just granite. They do granite, marble, quartz, all the man-made stuff that you can think of. They kind of bend nature to their will in order to come. Oh, there's a beautiful one on the YouTube right now. That is really incredible. And he's got this giant showroom you ought to go to. One, because you get to see all the stuff in person, touch it, see how it fits in with some other colors, bring some swatches, who knows. But the other thing that you get to do is meet Mitch. And when you meet Mitch, be prepared. You are likely going to sign up with Mitch. He is that good. He has lived the American dream, and he is a dude that's all about customer satisfaction. So much so that if you sign up with him today, and you tell him, by the way, you got to tell him I listened to you on the George Show on 710 KNUS. That's the easy part. Then Mitch gets 20% off of your labor. That's $1 in $5 back into your pocket for labor. Or you can say, you know what? I'm not that interested in the labor part, but what I am interested in is a free kitchen sink with my kitchen countertop package, or bathroom sink for the bathroom countertop package. This guy is the best. Find it out for yourself. 303-386-5919, 303-386-5919. He's our counter guy. Make him your counter guy. When we come back, Brian, Chad, Bob, we'll get to all of you if we can. It's George Brockler on the George Show, 710 KNUS. George Brockler right back with you here at 710 KNUS. I promised the phone lines. I'm going right to them. Chad, you're on 710. Chad, what do you think?
So I hate to tell you, I can't talk you off the ledge. I think you'll like my perspective. So I'm a police officer. My wife's a school teacher, and we can't get out of here fast enough.
Really?
We're stuck here. We're financial hostages till we hit our retirement. So that's about 6 years away. And my daughters are going to be finishing high school then. And it started with us with the education system. We moved our daughters from, we were in Jeffco. We moved our daughters from public school because it started to get crazy to a charter school.
Okay,
and
great.
then COVID hit.
Oh.
And then they just, what they did to the kids during COVID. And our charter school tried to fight them and they got sued, or they got, ticketed by the public health people. They were part of the lawsuit. And then they didn't have enough power to fight them. So now we are moving to your neck of the woods in Douglas County and sending our girls to private school where they were able to fight off those. But if you see the pattern, it's just everything costs me more money, or I have to keep moving away and away and away,
right?
To try to basically protect my kids from the crime, from the legislation, and they just keep. And I thought, this city or this state will flip. I thought
so
this
too.
State will flip, and obviously not. I mean, they just keep doubling down. Marijuana was should have been the eye opener, right? What did they do the very next year? They tried to get the safe injection site.
Yeah.
And now that gal's my representative in Jefferson County.
Right. Nice work.
And so it's a
Chad.
double down. It's a double down. They don't learn.
Do you think about after the kids? It sounds like your kids are young enough that you're not like, hey, they're out of high school in a few years. Do you have thoughts about, hey, if Douglas County isn't going to be the safe distance from this garbage that I think it is, we're thinking about moving elsewhere, or are you guys just?
We're out of the state as soon as we can go.
Buddy, where would
my
you go?
kids weren't so we got. I'd like to do 2 little small houses, South Dakota and Florida.
That sounds
Wyoming
like heaven,
and
man.
Texas, Alabama, Tennessee, some warm spots, and then
can I throw out another little
to.
gem there just for people to chew on? Arkansas. I know that sounds crazy, but there are some. I was out there to talk to their. They have beautiful lakes out there, beautiful place up against the Ozarks and other places. Really nice area, and I'm telling you, just based off of my conversation with their prosecutors, they still actually fight criminals and hold them accountable, which is crazy. It's like being in Disneyland for prosecution.
Yeah, and I'm a Denver cop, and I can't tell you, it just breaks my heart what's going on in the city. And again, it makes no sense. Everything they do is hurting the people it's designed to protect.
No, but I think we have now hit a certain momentum where I don't know how to describe them. I'm going to say takers, but that isn't totally fair. The takers are now the majority from the producers. And so they just want to force their will on people. There's no tax that isn't beloved. There's no fee that they can't impose on you or me. There's no limitation to your rights to make themselves feel better. They're just there. They have the majority, and those people vote, and we are trapped with what's left. Hey, Chad, thanks for doing what you do and keeping up the good fight. Thanks for the phone call. Don't leave too quickly, but welcome to Douglas County. Chad's line is open. Listen, here's what I want to do. Bob and Justin and the other folks calling in text, we're going to keep this conversation going, but not yet. At 9:03, we're going to have Aaron Wood. I'm going to ask him some of these questions too, man, because this dude wants to be the chair of the state GOP party. Let me tell you about someone, though, as I'm sitting here thinking, someone who has not given up on the state, quite the opposite, is our friend Steve Wells out there with Deep Colorado Wells, IEC. He's the one that put together that program for us to go down to El Paso. We're going to have him on Thursday morning at 9. That's a guy that wants to rescue Colorado. And by God, if anybody can do it, it's going to be that guy. Go to our website, 710knus.com, click on the Colorado Undivided banner, sign the petition. Let's do something here. Let's try to make a change. Just not sure if it's going to work yet. Stick around. Aaron Wood next. George Brockler, 710 KNUS. Well, you can't hear it on the podcast, folks, but this is a little Dr. Feelgood from the Crew. Back in the 80s, man, that was when the big hair glam band stuff was at its finest right there. That reminds me of a bit of high school right there. George Brockler with you on the George Show, 710 KNUS. Listen, we've been talking about, and we'll continue the conversation, we've been talking about Colorado, like, is it too far gone? And have you made the decision to move? A lot of people text. I can't get through all the texts, but keep them coming. I'm slowly getting through them. I'm going to read them all. But maybe our Dr. Feelgood is going to be our next caller on the VIP line. He would like to become the chair of the GOP. That is a daunting task. Aaron Wood, thanks for joining us, sir.
Thanks, George. Thanks for kickstarting my heart this morning, too.
Look at you with the references, man. That tells me a little bit either about your taste in music or your age at the same time. Aaron,
I don't know. I grew up. My mom had big hair in the 80s, so that was about it.
Oh, now you just broke my heart. Where'd you go to high school?
I grew up in northern Indiana, so went to Washington High School.
Mm-hmm. And what were your extracurriculars, man? Help us figure out who you are.
Oh, well, I was on the football team, a non-stellar second string player, and I actually ran track, which is surprising if you know how not tall I am and how not fast I am. But it was a way to just stay active in the spring.
Well, so what brought you out here to Colorado?
Yeah. So it was 2013. My wife and I, after kind of thinking through some things in Indiana, had our sights set on Colorado. We had followed some ministries that were posted up in Colorado Springs and Woodland Park, and we thought, man, let's try something new. We really didn't see opportunity ahead of us in Indiana. And we packed up the family and we moved out west like some pioneers.
Yeah, listen, let's be honest. Given the year that you moved, weren't you really just following Peyton Manning?
No.
From Indiana to Colorado?
Not at all.
Where'd you guys
maybe a little bit?
Where'd you end up making your home?
Yeah, at first we lived in Colorado Springs, actually not too far from Cheyenne Mountain. We lived in Broadmoor Bluffs over of Fort Carson out there. We lived there for about 3 years, took a little detour in Salt Lake City for work, and then ended up in Highlands Ranch.
And that's where you're at right now. What are you doing for a living?
Yeah, that's right. So for a living, I'm involved with a couple companies here in Douglas County. One's involved in automotive. We operate an independent ship in Douglas County called ClearShift. We're right next to Ferrari, Denver. And another company I'm involved with, kind of sprung out of that. It's a media and technology company, and so we kind of do a little think tank stuff and work with data, analytics, media, and technology. Aaron, so far so good. The phone is a little, I don't know what the word is, kitschy or something. They're a little sketchy. Like there are times you just sort of drop off, and I don't know if there's a way to like grab onto a piece of metal attached to a telephone pole or something to increase the reception. I'm sort of joking, but it was just a little bit off. And just like that, you're gone. We can't. There we go. How about this? Let's try it this way.
That sounds better. Yeah, that's for a minute there, man. You were a hostage somewhere. You were just gone.
Yeah. The AirPods are not treating me well this morning.
Yeah, Aaron, you have been active in Republican politics for a while. Tell us why you've decided to take an otherwise comfortable life and throw it all away for the prospect of becoming the chair of the state GOP.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it comes down to, the heart behind it. I got involved not because anybody asked me to, but because I felt called to do so, to get off the sidelines and get involved, become a part of, the Republican Party, because it's our only fighting chance and fighting force we have against the progressive left in our state. And kind of watching things play out throughout the last year, I just see what the Republican Party needs is just a different approach, an outside perspective. And quite honestly, the perspective of, business branding and business operational leadership and marketing messaging, but also team building.
Well, listen, you moved here after marijuana had been voted on and became legal. And maybe that and Peyton Manning explain your move. I'm kidding. So even though marijuana got fully functional legal in about that 2014, 2015 range when it finally launched, you didn't know the Colorado from before, but you're here now. And have you seen changes in Colorado and maybe even the Republican Party since 2013, since you got here? And what are they?
Yeah, let me kind of paint a little picture here. Indiana is a very Republican state,
yes,
but not in the same way that politics are in Colorado. Like the Republican Party in Indiana is very uninvolved. It doesn't have the zeal that Republicans tend to have here in Colorado. But there are pockets of Indiana, like South Bend, like Indianapolis, Fort Wayne. They're very Democrat. And those Democrat cities, I'm from South Bend. So Mayor Pete
That's
Buttigieg,
Pete Buttigieg country. Yeah.
Yeah, he ruined our city with one-way roads and roundabouts and left. I mean,
he's doing wonders for the Department of Transportation.
Yeah, so he did some pretty messed up things there. It didn't really work out to grow the town. But here's the thing: the Republicans never really took issue with it, and there was nobody speaking out. Moving out here to Colorado, my perspective was Colorado. We're out west, pioneers that spirit of freedom and independence. Kind of you leave me alone and I'll leave you alone is sort of what we expected.
Yeah.
And then coming out here, seeing the marijuana growth and the sort of transient people that move in and out of the state. It just seemed like it's really eroding away from what I believe like the values of the people of Colorado actually represent. And that's conservatism, that's pro-family, that's pro-freedom, pro-life, stuff like that. There's a huge, evangelical ministry presence here in the state as well too. But even with that, we've got so many problems where it's like the progressive left has really infiltrated the state and made it to where it's not a place where people can thrive. I look at it this way, like with my kids, I don't know what their future looks like in this state because it's so unaffordable. My first apartment was like $400 a month. I think a first apartment in Colorado for a half a basement's $1,000. And so you got to look at these things. It's like we're being taxed left and right under the guise of fees. Crime is up, drug use is up. We've got the worst abortion laws in the country, if not the world. And I look at it like, well, where's the cavalry? When are they going to show up? And I think the Colorado GOP represents at least our unified fighting force. But let's make it that, and let's work to actually be a stark contrast to the left, to the Democrats, in order to, grow our numbers and grow our strength and actually work to restore this state to what I believe it should be, not this Democrat hellhole, but a beautiful place where people can live and thrive and grow and start their own businesses and raise their families.
Now, you have seen the names of the other people that are contending for the same spot. My guess is all of them. I mean, they're all people that have been active in politics at one level or another. Why you? I mean, what is it you think you bring that the rest of them don't? And I'm not looking for disparaging the other candidates. I'm just looking for positive distinctions. Yeah.
Well, I tell you this, I'm encouraged to see the slate of candidates because I feel the bar is high. It's so great to see such a group of who I feel are mostly America first, freedom loving patriots and conservatives. So it's an honor to even be in this race with my fellow challengers. I think they're all great. I think they offer a lot. It'd be great. I think we can all work together at some point through this. The thing that I bring, I'm not a politician. I'm an outside perspective. I'm who I feel the rest of us are. We're busy with jobs, careers, families, work, but with it, I don't feel I'm jaded by, the political umbrella, if you will. I'm looking at things from a voter perspective, from a conservative outside perspective, but also looking at it from a business perspective. Like I've built a career in marketing and business development. And it's like, I want to take those skills, but then also my heart for turning this party around and apply that to the position.
We're talking with Aaron Wood. He is a candidate for chair of the state GOP. That election is going to take place up in Loveland on March the 11th. Not a lot of time left on the clock to do the campaigning. When you have sat back, Aaron, and tried to survey what happened in November with the midterms, which I think anybody would admit was a bloodbath. I mean, it just, and unpredictably for me in this way, I really felt like we had all the issues going our way. The economy, the gas price, the crime, everything seemed to be going our way. It was a midterm, first-term presidential election. History would have dictated that we would have done far better than we did. What happened?
Yeah, I felt the same way too. I was starting to feel hopeful that with all the problems that we have, this is an opportunity for Republicans to really come out and, win this time around. I think the issue came down to we didn't have enough of a stark contrast to our competitors. And this is my perspective. I've seen a lot of candidates that sort of played more of a moderate, leaning to the left approach to just sort of, skirt around some issues that they felt were too controversial, like abortion, for example. But abortion is still an issue, especially with the faith community, with churches. And I worked to get a lot of voter guides out in churches around the metro area, and the conversations really came up. It's like, I want to understand, and this is from the perspective of the church community, I want to understand that this candidate aligns with my values. And it was really hard to get the narrative across that, well, while this candidate doesn't align 100% with your values, at least having a Republican there is going to be better than the Democrats. And it started to gain a bit of momentum, but I really think that we needed a lot more earlier in the campaign season in 2022. And we ended up getting a lot of momentum. I felt end of October is really when it started to pick up.
Ballots had already been out for like 2 weeks, man. Yeah.
Ballots have already been out. Yeah, exactly. And so I think we had a real late start on that, and we should have started a lot earlier with a stronger push and stronger messaging, and really honestly call out the things that the Democrats are all about. You know, if they want to challenge us on abortion, you know, just say, so you're okay with killing a baby up until birth? Oh, well, no, I'm not okay with that, because, you know, I don't think most, you know, reasonable people are. But then point out the crime, point out the drug use, point out the inflation, talk about the eggs and the fees on bags at the grocery stores.
Do you feel like that conversation wasn't? I know the crime part was, because I was part of it. I know crime was there. In fact, but for efforts like Republicans pushing the crime narrative, which is, take a look around, folks, these numbers are historic. I don't know that it would have ever been picked up by the mainstream media and then the Democrats, but they did. But so when you point out, let's just use the one issue that you brought up, that's abortion. And that is, we had unpredictably, I think, Roe versus Wade gets overturned. And when I say unpredictably, I mean, this has been going on for 50 years. We've been talking about doing this, and cases have come and gone and nothing's really ever happened. This thing for the state of Colorado turns out to be a big deal, and not in our way, not in a pro-life way. And what I mean by that is, it seems like it had super motivated people who live in the state with the most permissive abortion laws in America. And the people that were proudly, and I'm talking the AG, the governor, the secretary of state, those people were proudly, I will never interfere with your right to have an abortion up to and including first grade. I mean, you know what I mean? Like there was no limitations.
Oh.
And they won. They won by huge numbers. So I don't know if it's that we didn't have the conversation, or it's just, we don't own that issue here. We don't have the will of the majority of voters.
You nailed it right there. We don't own the issue. This is the problem, is like, the Democrats own the narrative, they own the definitions, they own and control that issue, to where it's like they paint us as the boogeyman who's coming out to steal women's rights and basically put women in shackles to keep them from having an abortion. And really what it comes down to is, you know, I think Heidi Ganahl said it at the end of her campaign, we want this to be an issue taken up with the voters. But at the same time, we also have to paint the picture that, hey, we're not taking away your right to an abortion, but we are saying that it's egregious to abort a baby. Hey, 30 days after birth, you kind of look at this child and it doesn't quite fit your Pottery Barn nurseries, and so you just decide to be done with it.
Yeah. When you look at the party too, one of the things that I sense from just this limited perch here on 710, and I know you've seen this too, is that there is a fractioning of the Republican Party. And it's kind of always been there to one degree or another, but it feels pretty stark right now. Like there is a them and us camp. It's like the Sneetches before they all figure out how to get along. Do you know what I mean? There's stars and there's bellies and there's nuts. What do you see are the two camps? And maybe there's more than that, but what do you see are the two major camps? And how are you, Aaron Wood, going to fix that? Or do you not fix it? I mean, I worry about a purge. Like we're going to get together and decide, you're a rhino, you're establishment, you're not conservative enough. And we're going to end up surrounding ourselves with each other. And I don't know if that's how we win.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think in any way this needs to turn into a Mexican standoff, but really what we have to do is come to terms with the fact that, can we all agree we're tired of losing? Because I think regardless of what side you're on, what faction you're a part of, you want to win. You at least want to be a part of an effective organization. And then I think, too, you want to at least stand on the conservative platform and our core values. And obviously, if that's not the case, if you don't align with that, if you don't want to win, if you don't want to stand on the platform, if you don't want to take issue with the problems that we're facing in Colorado, perhaps this isn't the party for you. I look at it like a business. If you're a dissenter, if you're somebody in the business who wants to sow discord and bring people away from the cause and the purpose of the organization, you need to go, because the neutral parties are jumping in and they're looking left, they're looking right. Where do I side with? Do I side with people that want to get things done, or do I just side with people who just, want to complain.
And Aaron, do you think that's what's going on with the unaffiliated? Is they're just going with anyone who seems like they're principled and has a plan? Because from my vantage point, what I worry about is this last election was a pretty good canary in the coal mine, that unaffiliated group, they ain't conservative. They lean left way more than they lean right. And it's not that we're not singing the right tune. It's that they don't like any song we sing. They're just not inclined to go our way. Do you see it differently than that?
I do, George, and I see it as in that unaffiliated, yes, you will have plenty that lean left, obviously, but there are folks that are conservatives, but they still feel like the Republican Party isn't fighting for them, or isn't at least putting forth a message that they agree with and understand. And so it's like we just really need to dissect that unaffiliated crowd and, probably use some data and maybe some public outreach to understand who these voters are, where their sentiment is, what matters to them. And it's basically like running the PR approach to start doing focus groups, I think is what's going to actually help, rather than just sort of guess or go off opinions and hunches. Let's use data. Let's understand who they are by fact.
There was, and I'm pretty sure it was off your Facebook page, we stole your video. Stole is too strong of a word. We stole your video from that event that took place across the parking lot, I guess, or across the street from the Colorado GOP. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, the Boot Barn faction.
The boot, that's right. And I could not remember where it was. The Boot Barn thing.
The Boot Barn.
That video had some things in there that just struck me as not conducive to putting the party back together. Tell me what your thoughts were about that event. And you know the words that were spoken there, whether it was a nil, who I've always gotten along with, the nil calling people ass wipes. There were words like treachery and traitors and all this other stuff. Does that kind of discourse advance the cause of what you just described so eloquently?
I don't think it advances. It does at least fire a shot over the bow to kind of get you an idea.
Whose bow? Whose bow are we shooting over?
Well, I say it's probably airing frustration. Anil, I can't speak for Anil, but I wouldn't have chosen the words that he used, but I can agree with his sentiment. He's frustrated. He's upset. And I believe there's a lot of conservatives that are like that have put in the work, that have been a part of this, and feel, where is the leadership who's really helping me succeed? And maybe it comes down to a conversation. It's like, these are working, these are not working, bits of narrative that we should be using. But I think the thing is, there's frustration. There's frustration on people that have been conservative all the while, and there's frustration with people who are new to this too, to where they're feeling abandoned. They feel the party's walked away from them, and we at least have to air that frustration.
I get that. I get there's frustration, but man, what I heard wasn't, hey, this is ineffective, this sucks, KBB isn't a good leader or anything like that. What I heard was, in fact, there was somebody in the back of a truck that attacked her looks and accused her of some kind of plastic surgery or some such thing. But the other things where you're using words like traitor, treachery, treason, those are not voicing frustration. Those are labeling people from our own damn party as people who not need to be brought into the fold, and we need to figure out a way to win. Those are people that need to be ostracized, criticized, and frankly, sent away. And I mean, those are big terms. Treason is a big term, especially for anyone that's taken the oath, man. That is a big, bad term. And when those things get thrown around, it feels less like frustration and more like condemnation.
Well, and it's sort of a thing that happens too with our party, is that we air all of our grievances very openly and publicly. Whereas the Democrats, they handle these things behind closed doors. And then when they come out to fight, they're all lockstep with each other. They're all following the same marching orders and, reading out of the same hymnal, if you will. And this is an issue with us where it's like, we really need to get to a place where we're more productive. The Boot Barn event, right? Let's talk about that a little bit more. They asked me to be the MC, which I agreed to. I would have liked to see more organization, but here's the thing. Aside from, what was said at the event, what I would like to see is what the heart of the event was to get people organized who want to be involved and want to be impactful and want to make a difference, and actually run that across the whole state. Because this is what people are looking for, is like, okay, I am frustrated. What do I do next? And I've seen so many people get involved, as precinct committee people. And then they're asking, what do I do next? Where's the onboarding? Where's somebody to come alongside of me and work with me to be effective?
There is a texter here that asks, can you ask Aaron where in the job description it is for the chair to pick candidates? That's from a texter.
Yeah, I don't believe it is in the job description. If you're looking at the bylaws, the job description doesn't involve the chair picking candidates. I mean, it's up to the people of the Republican Party to pick candidates. But I do think what we need to do is start working to build a bench and identify people within our party who show promise, who show ability, that, you know what, maybe you should run for this House district, or maybe you should run for
recruiting.
Something else.
I get recruiting. I agree with you on that. I think this texter is probably expressing the idea that if the concern is, hey, we just don't have the right candidates, the worry is we're not going to try to get the right candidates through recruiting, but we're trying to try to discourage or put our fingers on the scale. And it sounds like you're saying that is not the role for the chair.
No, it's not the role for the chair. The role of the chair is to lead and organize the Republican Party. But in doing so, you're creating an opportunity. It's like creating a succession plan, where it's like we can have people grow and advance up throughout the party and identify people who are, leaders who would make good representatives. And then, of course, it needs to be up to our party to vote for those people to then be on the ballot and be our Republican representatives.
Hey, Aaron, before we let you go, I do want to ask you about this whole idea of what do we do with the primary? Now, there's a lawsuit being talked about there, and there's funding that's it. Let's presume that could go forward. Are you more in favor of the lawsuit than withdrawing from the primary as a party? Would you support withdrawing from the primary? And if the lawsuit doesn't succeed, and these things they're just so rare to succeed, especially when you look at the judges that are going to make the decisions. Would you rather keep in place the current system, or would you vote to withdraw entirely from the primary and just go to a state assembly system? And that doesn't have to be state assembly. You know how it could be county assembly, district assembly, all that stuff.
Well, what I would like to see is a lawsuit pushed through and advanced with the head of the party as the lead accuser, the plaintiff on it. I believe a reason that it failed before is that the chair of the GOP did not sign on as a plaintiff, and the courts looked at it as you need to be on here as a plaintiff, otherwise it's just members of the party and not the party itself. I think that we need to challenge and close the primary, not opt out of the primary. We need to close it, because realistically, people need to make a choice. Do you want to be a Democrat? Do you want to be a Republican? And in this point in the primary, I want Republicans voting for Republican candidates in the primary. We need to do the work before that to get our numbers up, to do our recruiting, to bring people to the platform, and not rely on the open primary to hopefully, do a broad net acquisition and acquire new Republicans. We need to be real targeted with ideal acquisition in finding who our Republicans are.
But to be clear, aside from, I think the lawsuit's the only vehicle for us to shut down the open primary, because I think you and I agree, ain't nobody amending the Constitution, petitioning to put things on the ballot, getting the legislature. That's probably just not realistic. But is your position then that in the absence of a successful lawsuit, I would rather see us stay in the current system than withdraw from the primary and just go to an assembly-only system?
I believe so, because I think in opting out, we would harm ourselves more. And really what it's a two-step behind sort of process. You got to look steps before. Let's look at the caucus. Let's look at the assembly. What candidates are getting the support and getting traction with the voters there, instead of just, do the primary and then hopefully the best candidate goes forward.
Aaron, what's the best way for folks to get to know more about you and maybe even help you out in this quest?
Yeah, sure. I put up a website. It's aaronwoodcolorado.com. So if you check out aaronwoodcolorado.com, I've got an overview of who I am, what my plan and ideas are for the party. I've also linked my Facebook, my Twitter, and also my LinkedIn to that website as well, too. And there's a contact form. Happy for folks to get in touch with me. If they want a phone call, text, email, whatever works best. I'm open to having conversations. I've got 2 ears, I've got one mouth, so I feel it's important to listen.
Aaron Wood, thanks, man. We'll have you on again. I mean, if you're interested in having the conversation. I really appreciated this first one. This was a good one. Thank you for doing it.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks, George.
Aaron Wood, he is a candidate for chair of the state GOP. That's coming up in like less than 2 weeks, folks. Today's the last day of February. We're talking March 11th up there in Loveland. That's going to be a big one. We're going to have Brandon Williams on tomorrow at 9 to have that same conversation. We're still trading texts and calls with Tina. We'll try to get Tina on as well. And if I'm leaving someone out, would you please let me know? Went long, but I thought it was important to talk to Aaron. Got some more texts coming on. Listen, I want to continue this conversation, and it could be about the Republican Party too. Can the Republican Party be saved? But can Colorado be saved? Or are you at that point where you're looking to go? Tons of texts. I'll get through those as well. Got a phone line open, Bob. I promise you, hang around. We'll get you on. It's 303-696-1971. George Brockler on The George Show. It's 710 KNUS. George Brockler back with you here on 710 KNUS. Just a number of texts, really heartfelt texts about this entire topic. The Colorado Republicans would and did blank up a wet dream. We knew the Dems would do this. Why? They ran on trash. They are passing and won. That is true. I don't think they hid their agenda. I don't know, man. I don't know what's going on. Boulder and Denver are driving the state of Colorado. I mean, that's just how it is. Yes, considering moving, I live in Wash Park, and it's scary. I just need to find a state with good employment, houses not too expensive, and red. I'm 44 and have many years of working. Help me find a state. Well, we're sort of doing that here. Colorado is lost as Denver is lost. I'm sort of wondering. I've heard, let's see, so far we've had Idaho, Texas, Florida, Wyoming a lot, South Dakota. Golly geez, man. I still got 5 years here before the little guy gets out. And then who knows, man? I mean, I'm wedded to this state for a lot of different reasons, including, my time in office, and I live in the jurisdiction, and hell, I may want to run for office again to try to figure out how to save what we've got. But I cannot say there isn't something attractive about the idea of going to a place where your values aren't diminished and discriminated against, but embraced and protected. Oklahoma has a vote on cannabis legalization in March. We may move there depending on the result of that vote. I presume you mean if they vote no. Hi, George. I'm a native leaving in May. Undisclosed location. Why not disclose it? We're not tracking you down here. We're not going to do that unless you beg us to. Notice that while those careers may have a greater percentage of women, I dare anyone to tell me why I should be a member of the Republican Party. I was a Republican until H.W. Bush, and read my lips, and then I changed to unaffiliated. The men in leadership roles in those careers are probably more threatened by the women they supervise, and therefore second-rate leaders. I'm clearly coming in late on this text tube conversation. I'm going to try to catch up on that. George, my grandparents homesteaded in Colorado. Deep roots here, but I'm gone as soon as possible. It's our buddy Steve. Don't think there was a single thing that did it. Combination of a number of things: gun control, bad economic policies, overreaching business regulations, homelessness, etc. We talk about moving to NE, which I believe is New England. No, I'm kidding. I'm pretty sure it's Nebraska, Idaho, South Dakota, Wyoming, Montana, which is really just north of Wyoming, if you remember your map, and Texas. I love the idea of Montana too, but holy cold. I mean, that's I don't mind winter. I just mind when winter is 3/4 of the year. That's a bigger risk for me. 303-696-1971. Bob, I promised if you hang on, we would get to you. Bob from Denver, you're on 710. What do you think?
Good morning, George.
Good morning.
An oasis of discussion
in
a vast sea of ignorance, paranoia, and propaganda.
Well, we're normally on the outside of this oasis. Tell me what you're thinking about all this. How long have you been here, and have you given serious thought to picking up and moving?
I'm a native, and I'm too old and beat up and crippled to go anywhere.
What do you think then about when you hear all these people, all these people texting in and calling in and talking about, hey, I'm ready. Well, what are you thinking about that? If you were a younger man, less broken, less crippled, do you think you would move on?
No.
And why not? Tell me why not.
I've been other places, and you can run, but really, do you think you can hide? You think there's this 48 states here, or 50 states, however you want to, Alaska. Anyway, you really think you moved to Wyoming that issues on the national economy and so forth, that stuff won't follow you?
No, I think the national economy and energy policy would, but in terms of this state and local stuff, where they're just coming at you from all angles, maybe you can put that at bay,
Well, yeah, you get a little bit shorter dress, add some high heels, change the color of lipstick. I got news for you guys. The pig is still a pig.
So you don't think like a Wyoming or a Florida or a Texas or a South Dakota, any of those places offer? Go ahead.
I'll tell you, the weather in Florida, it starts getting hot in April.
Yeah.
And January I like, but wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I am.
And I.
Go ahead.
So anyway, do you remember when America was great?
Yeah, listen, I always think America's great, But I remember when Colorado was great.
Make America great again, because people think that. I heard a guy here a little while ago talking about the communists.
Yeah.
Blame it on the communists, yada, yada. Okay. So if we put a man on the moon in 1969, and we were building cars and paying off the national debt, World War II,
right,
all the way through to sometime around 1980. So making America great again. What changed?
Yeah, I don't know if
America
there's ever
was
one
great,
thing.
and then by 1980 it wasn't.
No, I think America's always been great. I mean, listen, we've done the Clinton experiment and the Obama experiment, and now we're dealing with I don't know what this is that we're going through right now, but I do think America's great and still has the potential to be great. But when you look at the individual states like Colorado, I don't know how we get to there from here. I mean, that November election rocked me hard. And now to see how it plays out in the legislature, I'm like, good God, how do we undo all this stuff?
Well, and I'm aware of the people sleeping in tents under bridges and stuff. In California, the weather's a little bit nicer, so there's more of them in California and stuff. But really, is it just all about those people are all just defective and you just got to whip them back into shape?
I don't know if it's
that going to fix it.
I don't know if that's going to fix
I don't
it, but
either.
I know that we attracted them here, and now we're making it easier for them to be here. Same with the illegals. I mean, they all talk. They know. They're trying to get to big cities so they can disappear and blend in, and the big cities are accommodating them by saying, don't worry, we'll do everything we can to make it hard for ICE to do their jobs. And that's where Colorado and Denver have gone. And I'm like, well, what kind of city and state do you think we're creating here?
Name somebody that doesn't come under the jurisdiction of the federal income tax law.
I guess someone that doesn't earn any income.
Well, yeah, then there's earned income credits and this, that, and the other
Yeah,
thing.
but that's you getting money from the other people that earned the taxes, that paid the taxes and stuff like that. But Bob, I get it. Listen, I appreciate the call. I want to try to get to just a couple more folks. Thank you for calling in.
Bye-bye.
Bye, sir. Thank you for that. Hey, 303-696-1971 is the number. Artis and Peter, I will get to you. Let me do this, though, first, so I don't have to cut anybody off as we head into a break. I want to tell you about some other great Coloradans, and I mean locally grown, homegrown Coloradans who are putting out the kind of small business product at the big box store quality, but for a small business price that you just want to go to, and that's Littleton Fine Jewelry. I mean, like Jesse and his family, they're Coloradans through and through. First off, I can't imagine them ever leaving. They carved out a business here. Let me tell you what they did. They took over a watch repair business from mom and dad and blew it up, took it to the next level. This is the American dream. They got their kids all in school. These are folks that you look at and say, this is why I'd stay. I would stay because of Jesse and his team of locally grown folks and these craftsmen that do this custom design jewelry stuff. So yeah, you could go visit them to just transact business, but you're cheating yourself out of an experience. Get to know them, become part of that community and part of that family, if you will. And then as things happen in the future and people come to you and say, I'm looking for an engagement ring, or I'm looking to move on from an engagement ring, or whatever, buying and selling the gold and the silver and the jewels and fixing the jewelry and the watches and, my God, coins, they do that stuff. And why not go with someone who you can trust? Because they're going to be there year in and year out. That's Littleton Fine Jewelry. So check them out at littletonfinejewelry.com, or you can visit Littleton Jewelry simply by going south of Hudson Gardens on Santa Fe. Take a right after the jewelry repair sign, poke your head in, tell them you heard about them on 710 KNUS. They love that, and so do we. Let's get back to the phone lines. I'm going to try to get as many as I can before this break. Artis, you're on 710 KNUS. What do you think, Artis?
Well, I moved here from Ohio in 77, so I'm not moving again. But
you're still feeling it from that last one.
Well, not only that, but I mean, Florida, yeah, it's great until the hurricanes come and the humidity hits. So, yeah, no, thank you. It's just we need to work on here. And do the Democrats have a primary, or are we the only ones that went that way?
No, the whole state is that way. That was a state ballot thing that took place. It amended the Constitution as best I can tell, and they're in the same boat we are. It's just their boat is filled with a bunch of left-leaning unaffiliateds. Ours is not. Yeah.
Well, and also there is no point in my mind to have an open primary. Why not just say, yeah, everybody screw us up, and then we'll try to deal with it once we're once we're actually voting.
I'm telling you, there are going to be things on the ballot that take us down the road of a jungle primary, which is people just put themselves on a ballot and the top two move on to some other kind of primary. And if we do the ranked choice voting, we won't even do that. And it'll be everybody at all the time can be on the ballot. And I would encourage you to run, Artis.
Yeah, right. No, I would never make it. And I don't have family here. My brothers that still live back in Cleveland, and they've volunteered to come out and move me back. And it's like, no, guys, humidity and I are just not good friends. But it just, I don't think legalizing marijuana was a good idea.
Oh my God, no.
My family is my church family that I've been involved with for 40 plus years. So that I can't move a whole church family to anywhere else. And it's just the whole abortion thing. I used to be a newborn intensive care nurse. So I took care of abortions that the body aborted. It scares me to death that we're so, people are less likely to put down their dog than they are their baby.
I get it. Artis, I'm glad you're staying, but I gotta believe part of that is you think we can save Colorado.
I think so. We need to depend on God and not Polis.
It's true, but who's the guy that's got his hands on the lever of state government right now? It's JP.
Oh, I know.
It's JP. I
know.
Not JC.
It's scary.
It's the scary one. Artis, thanks for the phone call. I'm going to try to cut away for a break here. And Artis, great caller, great listener. Her line is open at 303-696-1971. Stick around for our final break. When we come back, Peter, Frank, everybody else that calls in, I'll keep reading the text too, as many as I can. It's been a very productive day. I love this conversation. It won't be the last time that we have it. But this has been good, man. Stick around. Try to help us talk through this. 303-696-1971. George Brockler on The George Show, 710 KNUS. Nothing more unsettling than seeing Stephen Tubbs walking through the hallways before nighttime. This guy's the 4 to 7 o'clock dude. You better be listening to this guy before him, Deb. Flora, as for me, I've got one segment left, and I want to try to get in as many callers as I can. Peter, you're on 710. What do you think, Peter?
Good morning, Bill. I listened to your dissertation the last hour, in the 8 o'clock hour, and you're saying everything I've been saying for the last year and a half to everybody that wants to listen. And if I weren't, my wife and I've lived here since 1972 when I came to do what was to be a 4-year tour at the Air Force Academy and ended up to be the second half of my Air Force career. But anyway, and we've considered Cheyenne, Wyoming, because we've dealt with a realtor up there who keeps sending us homes. The problem is I can't find anything up there that I like as much as what we have here.
Well, what are you looking at?
Well, we built our dream house. And in fact, I love to say this. I contracted for this house on the day after 9/11. We finally moved in. We were living in ski country at the time. And we moved in at the end of 2003. And I just cannot find another home that we love as much as the one we had built. And so at my age, and I'm 83 years old, it's not that easy to just pack up and leave.
Peter, what's the tipping point for you, though, in even thinking about it, even starting to go down that road? What happened? Is there a moment, or was it just over a period of time?
I started having trepidations about this about the time Bill Ritter became the governor.
That was it. That was the one where you started thinking, man, is this the right place? That didn't do it for me. And I'm even Hickenlooper. I thought we can rebound from this, but after reelecting Polis and my God, Weiser, and Griswold and the other guy that nobody can seem to name from the treasurer's office and the legislature, I thought, holy smokes. I mean, what are we doing?
Well, as I said, it started with Ritter, but I knew it was a gradual thing, but I just saw it going. After Owens wasn't governor anymore, I just saw it going downhill. I think one of the real things that got me when Hickenlooper didn't have the guts to put the Chuck E. Cheese killer to death like he deserved. That's the sort of thing, after spouting off about, what kind of a great person he was. And then when he said, I'm not cut out to be a senator, and guess what? He's the senator. He's the senator of Colorado. Give me a break, people.
Peter,
this group that's in there now just kills me. By the way, you mentioned Pete Lee a while ago, who represents some district in Colorado Springs. That guy's trying to make all crimes.
Mercifully, he's out of the legislature now. I think he's done. I haven't seen him around. He would normally be the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee. So there's that. Hey, Pete, thanks for this. I want to try to get on just a couple more folks if I can, honor them calling in. Frank, you're on 710 KNUS. What do you think, Frank?
George, I just wanted to be one of those 5 listeners you got out there to kind of wake up in the morning. No, I really appreciate what you do. You and Billy, you're sincere. You're trying. I think, it's got to be a overall game plan. You're trying to awaken people, make them aware of the issues. I think the alarm has to rise at the Commie-Crat, cancer party that's trying to push their agenda. I think there needs to be the development of a red print to counter the blueprint, and pointing out the fallacy of most of the points of the blueprint that are not effective. They're more agenda-driven. I think we need to take a slate of candidates that are obviously good, and they are going to have to learn to put aside the small stuff and go for the big stuff that's going to make a difference. And I think there's going to have to be a conservative legal team put together to give the hot foot. No, I really mean that, of good, solid conservative lawyers to take to task all these crazy things.
And you hope you get the right judges too, Frank. That's part of the problem.
Well, they've already bought off many of the judges. I'd like to know and look at some kind of scorecard on these judges, because Obama, it started before Obama. It's the counting of the votes. And so they've done that for many years. But isn't it sad that a class of people that you can't touch, as you pointed out, can kind of overrule and screw the state that you live in for a political agenda?
Frank, thank you for this, man. I appreciate it. It's always good to hear your voice. Thanks for the kind words. And I hope you're not leaving the state either. Give me one more second here. Forgive me, Frank. I want to try to get in our last caller. Russ, you're on 710. I've got under a minute, but it's all yours. Go ahead, friend.
Okay, Joe, thanks.
I just want to say, yeah, no, this country has just really gone downhill with it's the civil rights issues that, again, this country's government wants to save everybody. It doesn't want Jesus to save everybody. It doesn't want God to save everybody because that's competition. They don't want to do that. That's the job they want. And so it's a civil rights thing. It's unlimited. You can fill it with whatever you want, however you want. And this, the Constitution and the government's only supposed to do a few things. One of them is the protective orders. And they're not doing that because they're using civil rights to say, oh, no, we're supposed to give these people rights. Well, the Indians are on reservations because they don't want those rights. So it's a long story, but how this all develops is that it's just the government saying, hey, let us save you and not let something else.
Russ, I appreciate the conversation. This was one I could have started a few minutes ago because you have great stuff to talk about. And I'm so sorry we couldn't develop it and ask questions about it, but thank you for the call. Listen, big show today. Lots of great conversation. We're going to do it again tomorrow. Go to that website, 710knus.com. Click on Colorado Undivided. Sign that petition. Let's try to change this state. It's George Brockler, George Show, 710 KNUS.